Right, welcome along everybody to this evening's Scrutiny Improvement Committee. This one's actually, in a way, a special meeting because it's the first one after the big election. And for those of you who attended the previous one, we had quite a quiet finish, and that's why we have a robust agenda this evening. Welcome along everybody, particularly newer members and members that we welcome back. So Councillor Frenchman, good to have you back after a short period away. And Councillor Wesley, welcome along.
Good evening.
Old faces, Councillor Randall, thank you very much. Nice to have you on the committee again. We always have lots of action when you're on it. And Councillor Grubin, welcome along to our members and guests. Right, so the first item on the agenda this evening is to sign the minutes. Before I do that, I'm actually going to rejig a couple of agenda items. Councillor Randall asked us if she could get away slightly earlier. I believe you have an appointment in your role as mayor, so we'll accommodate that, particularly because if you don't present yours, we're going to be stuck, because you've got two to bring back this evening. So what I propose to do is we'll have we'll do the usual bits and then we'll go straight on to that's the first agenda item. Is that okay, everybody? Very good, and thank you to those that are waiting to present. You go slightly later. So, first of all, let's sign the minutes of the meeting from the 14th of April 2015. Are we all happy with that, or are there any issues anybody would like to raise if you haven't already raised those? Agreed? Thank you. I'll sign this. So, the next item is apologies. I think we have a full house tonight, Wendy. Not received, I wasn't expecting any, so we have all the committee here. That's the main thing, so thank you for coming. The next job on the agenda is to appoint a vice chairman. I've already welcomed new members, that was done, and a vice chairman. I would actually use chairman's privilege, if you like, and actually nominate Councillor Cribbin. Do we have any second on that? Thank you very much. Any dissenters or alternative proposals? Okay, happy with Councillor Cribbin? Are you happy with that?
I'm happy to stand. I think that should be the first question.
Give him seconding first. Okay, in that case then we'll accept Councillor Cribbin to be the vice. Thank you very much, everybody. And number 4, declaration of members' interests. None to raise. Thank you. So that then takes us on to agenda item. It's the rolling work programme, and it's the two that Wendy's going to raise is the 1-year implementation. Sorry, no, it's not. I'm talking rubbish. Do apologise. It's the see what happens, Wendy. It's the 12-month SLM. And it's the complaints. So it's 8 and then 8B. So Wendy, will you take the floor, please? First of all, begin by bringing the SLM one to the table. And for the sake of clarity on this one, Councillor Randall has adopted this one. Councillor Long was the chair of the project. And the reason Councillor Long has handed it over to Councillor Randall is because he is now a portfolio holder, and because portfolio holders are not allowed to be task assignment leaders, and therefore we have to give a new home. But the work was actually mainly completed during Councillor Long's work previously, and obviously you're one of his team anyway, so you're fully briefed. One more note of background on this one. We have resolved to have a look at the implementation 1 year after it's been fully implemented for all of the work programmes that we propose and then go through full council. And this is actually the first one to have gone right through the cycle and to be reviewed. And that's what Councillor Randall is going to update us. So I'll hand over to you, Councillor Randall, to brief us.
Yes, thank you. And as you said, Councillor Long led it, and I worked with him on this past panel, and it was the 12-month review. You've obviously got your papers, and you've seen everything there. The leisure centre, really pleased with how that's going along. Evidence that, the Saxon Suite is improving. And as you'll see, that there's an Appendix 1 that gives data of how they're using that now. So that's going really well. So no problems with the leisure centre whatsoever. The problem that we did feel that there was cause for concern, both Councillor Long and myself, was the sports park. And you've got that on Appendix 2. And you've got the ATPs, the Astro usage on the summer.
Councillor Randall, what does that mean? AstroTurf?
Yeah, it's AstroTurf pitches.
AstroTurf pitches?
Yeah.
Is somebody clear on that?
Yeah.
But don't forget, I couldn't see it defined anywhere on the sheet, so
No.
AstroTurf pitches for the sake of clarification.
Yeah, so originally when we had the first document, we only had rarely used, occasionally used and regularly used. So I went back and actually said, can we have a space if there's never usage, because didn't know how often rarely used was. So that's
So
come
you
back.
define the terminology in the table?
Yeah, so obviously there's the little graph up there, and obviously you can see that right the way through, all 4 of those, 9 till 2 is, there's quite a period of time where it's never used. I've actually gone through, counted the hours, and I believe there's 85 usage hours every week. Starting at the top one, that breaks down to a usage, and I've incorporated 3 because you can see the graph quite clearly there, but the usage works out 11.7%. The usage on the AstroTurf on the winter is just over 42%. This was regular usage I was looking at, because rarely used is less than 2, so it could be 1. We're just trying to look at regular usage.
Councillor Randall, regularly used is what, 6 bookings per week or more?
Yes, yeah.
By definition?
It is, yeah. And grass pitches in the summer, there isn't any regular use whatsoever. And grass pitches in the winter, the only usage they've got is on Saturday and Sunday, so that's at 16.5%. So the advice, obviously we would like to see how that was being used. The reason why schools aren't using the sports park, was it transport, was it costings, what it may be, what we can actually do to look at how we can boost this usage of this park. So that's where we come across the advice to actually re-look at this again in 12 months' time to see what's been built on.
Councillor, a couple of questions before I hand down to the floor. When we say advice, do you mean recommendation?
Well, because I think it was because of that we were already, all we were doing was reviewing what we could review. This was something new, really, that has come out of that review, so we couldn't do a recommendation on something that we weren't originally really looking in depth at. So that's why what Councillor Long and myself would like to see this perhaps on maybe even a new task.
New work stream.
Yeah.
For the sake of understanding rugby, one of the things we did was we said we wanted to review things that have been previously implemented, and therefore we hadn't already built up a template or a way of thinking about it. So this actually is the first report we've had back from something we've worked on previously. I think we're minded to make sure we didn't reopen all the floodgates, if you like, on a particular project, but it was really an assessment against the recommendations we made previously. So,
and also out of that, obviously, we have only got usage of the sports park up on Browns Road, and obviously they do have other parks and fields under their remit as well. So.
But in here we're only talking about the one location.
Yeah, that's all.
Let's open to the floor. Does anybody have any questions on this? Does it make sense, first of all, and can you understand where the report has gone?
Why did you just one location?
Because what we were doing was we were re-looking, we was doing a 12-month review of an original task panel. So we were really only looking at what was in that original document.
So we'll review the scope that we previously
couldn't go, you're not really supposed to go out.
Yeah, I understand. I was just intrigued as to how that happened in the first place at the other one where I looked at it. If it was an issue.
It may have
No,
been that
that's
they were never
difficult to
used, so...
It's a good question, actually, Councillor Wilson. I think it actually dates back because originally it was mainly focused on the main indoor location rather than the external locations. But, I mean, if this is... I guess we have a very simple question here. Once you understand what is being reported, our basic question is, do we take this advice, do we launch a new panel, or do we simply say, we might come back to it in 12 months' time? By might will just resolve the might until we're not. Councillor Paul.
Just a question and probably a comment on Appendix 2 on page 31. Starting at the bottom. Glass pitches in the winter from 4 o'clock up till 10 p.m. Never used. Well, it gets rather dark at that time of night. Unless there are floodlights, I wouldn't suspect it would be used. It's also disappointing, but nevertheless obvious why it's not being used from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. People do go to work and schools are there. So perhaps a separate scope would be during school holidays. The grass pitches, again, the same comment, 9 till 2, it's quite obvious why they're closed. But it raises a question to me where, I'm going to be at planning tomorrow and there will be a complaint that we're shutting down football pitches and there is no provision for them. And clearly there is quite a lot of unused provision here. I would also ask, I'm not conscious of the other sites. I would think the tennis courts, do we include the hollows, but we are talking about those sites that are the responsibility of everyone active, presumably.
It's a good question, actually, Councillor Paul. Let me come back to that point. I think the point you might be making is the usage profile from the locations we've reviewed here actually looks unsurprising, given the nature of activity that it's being used for and we might be using it. Let me come to a couple of comments. I've got Councillor Randall, Councillor Wesley, then Tony's got his hand up. Do you want Councillor Randall first?
Yeah, I don't know if they've got any floodlights up there, and we were just going on, that's what they submitted. So
Okay.
we're working on that. As for the usage in the school day, 9 till 4, that was one area that we wanted to look at because SLM would like to see some of the schools going to use in some of these areas. Some of the schools, especially primary, they haven't got any astro area, so it could through the winter, they may not be able to do any outside PE. So actually, is there a reason why the schools aren't using these areas? And another thing you're saying about, these aren't used and obviously pitches are being decreased. Is it a costing? So there's lots of different things that we can be looking at. If it's too expensive to use, is that a reason why?
Maybe it requires some further explanation. Councillor Wesley.
Yeah, sort of what Councillor Randall was saying earlier. But I think obviously intuition tells you a certain amount of things on this. It's not necessarily true, is it? And it's like non-usage. Yes, you would expect the areas of non-usage to be non-usage. But of course, there are prime times for sports, and that is when everyone wants to play football on the pitches. You can't tell people they're going to go and play football on a dark pitch at 10 o'clock on a winter's night when there's no games to play. So, by default, that pitch is redundant unless there are floodlights. You've also got usage issues of using pitches in the winter, training and running around anyway. I mean, my real question was, and I think Councillor Randall probably asked it, was in the first instance, when this was first looked at 12 months ago, was the strategy looked at as to how and why people use sports pitches, particularly schools, or was it just an exercise to understand what was being used? And I think Councillor Randall probably answered that.
So there might be a big piece of work here, actually. I think go back to the point that this wasn't looked at 12 months ago, this was actually started to be implemented 12 months ago. So it's quite a while ago. It's Councillor Lomax who did this project. Let me wrap this up in a minute. Let's go to Tony first.
Yes, Chairman, I was just trying to help in terms of the scope of what this post-implementation review was about.
I'm fairly clear in my mind that what committee was saying last time round is that it was a review of the implementation of the recommendations that have been started at S&I and gone through and agreed by council. So the three recommendations are set out in the paper under the introduction as points 1, 2 and 3.
Absolutely. The council should continue to support the scrutiny group, yeah.
And they are specific to the sports park and to the Saxon Suites.
Yes.
So that was the scope of the post-implementation review. So there's a danger of going off track here.
So, I mean, that answers your question, actually, Councillor Wesley and Councillor Moore. Would we be minded to actually go into this, not necessarily this one in more detail, but have a look at this in more detail as a new scoping exercise? So a new assignment with a new chairperson to lead it, and if so, do we have any volunteers?
Chairman, could I appreciate it's not quite in order, but there's just a thought since I'm here. If the committee is interested in, how can I put it, physical well-being of the population, and particularly perhaps of children, given the focus that's been discussed, it might be that you want to think about a task panel which is about the ways in which either the whole population or a certain age bracket of the population can access sporting opportunities at, if you like, a consumer rather than a producer perspective. I just put that your thoughts, really.
Thank you, Simon. I also actually thought that a good opportunity for us actually may be to bring Councillor Hills in for the next meeting, and then we could actually use that as a basis to discuss this strategy, and then maybe that could kick off a document. Well, not a document, sorry, an assignment. What do we feel about that? Should we do that?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah. Councillor Paul.
Something actually comes to mind, and in the past, various colleagues have been involved with the leisure centre. Disappointing still the usage of the Saxon Suite. I think we would all agree with that. Has this information been passed to everyone active for their comments and their aspirations, shall we say, and their ideas of taking it forward before we actually spend any time?
Yeah, Councillor Randall, could you give us an update on this? Because you obviously, in your research, you discussed aspects with them.
We did.
So how did this come up in conversation, etc., in your analysis?
Well, obviously they have been increasing their usage at the leisure centre, and they're happy with how they're, increasing their usage and what their membership numbers are. As I say, we have no problems with that. I think that also they were, obviously, you can see that lack of usage around that sports park actually has a drain on the leisure centre finance. If this was working better and they were getting more bookings, and I would, just by talking to them, I would think that they may appreciate some work being done around, looking at the usage, why it's not being used, what they're doing, to help them actually improve the usage. Because why wouldn't you want to know that and get out there and try and make it more usable? I mean, if it come down to it, that actually schools would say we could book you from 9 till 2, Monday to Friday across around this area, if the pitch was £25 rather than say £50, and they had full usage, then they might think, that's very beneficial, and we could go for that. So
The price point might be wrong, etc. Okay, thank you, Councillor Randall. What I propose to do is, we've got an agenda item number 12 later where we actually look to bring in a portfolio for this meeting. My proposal is that we invite Councillor Hills and we have a look at that broader topic around access to sports, etc., along the lines of what Simon said, but actually think of those issues and take a broader look at it. But actually we in terms of dealing with this one, let me do that one first. Are we agreed that that's okay for number 12? We actually invite Councillor Hills for the next meeting?
That's a good idea.
Straight away, give us a flavour of it. Okay, so that's agreed. We'll revisit later formally. And then in terms of dealing with this one, we have a further review of activities at the sports park. My initial feeling on this one was actually this is no. I don't think we should look at it again in 12 months' time. And I think that really goes back to the objective we spoke about later. It's a one-time 12-month review of implementation unless it opens up a new work panel. And I would have said that actually once we get into the situation of starting to look at everything in 12 months' time, we're going to start to get very heavy boots, because always we're going to be looking backwards at projects we've done over the number of years rather than looking over now and forward. So what I would say, what my personal feeling on this would be that the advice is noted, but we don't need to do anything further with it. What do members think about this? Councillor Arnold, it's you or the author.
Well, I actually, until I read back over the previous task manual, it must have totally slipped my mind from when it was, but I didn't even realise that SLM I didn't realise under their remit there were the other. So I thought it was just the tennis courts, the leisure centre and Browns Road. I didn't realise actually that it was what's known as the Spider Park and Fish Ponds and the Hollows. I didn't realise that at all. I don't know if there's anything on those, any sort of sporting played on those areas. And so to me, I don't know how that was looked at really. I just think it's something that needs to be looked at, because, if it is a costing, if it's not being used because of the cost, and obviously, there's talk of having a new 3G Astro pitch, if it's all down to cost already, and we get a new pitch, and people can't afford to play on that, what's the point? So I think, looking forward, that it could,
It could be a case of actually using the assets we already have, much better than sweating the assets.
Yeah.
Let's go first of all to Councillor Frenchman.
It strikes me we have an asset here which has been fundamentally underused, except at peak times at the weekends when obviously the football season's on. So that's why it's green. It strikes me that this information has been found out. Everyone active who should know this information, why aren't we asking them what they're doing about it? And perhaps they should be asked to do a survey to find out why it's not being used and let them do the work, because also perhaps they should be talking to the schools and finding out if it is a cost issue, because it's better to get £25 when you've got a fixed asset like that per hour than get nothing at all, because one assumes that there is costs associated with it not being open, because we mow it and maintain it and everything. So I think we should we should ask them to be looking at it. It's not a council.
Yeah, absolutely. Within this, Councillor Frenchman, we do need a structured approach to doing that, and that's what I'm really seeking, because I think we've got. Let's put it to very black and white terms. We've got some advice here. We either take the advice and say yes, we'll follow those individually, or we actually say let's launch a bigger piece of work. And actually, the springboard for that bigger piece of work is by inviting Councillor Hills in, and then actually doing a deeper analysis. Let me take some of these other comments. Simon.
Chair, if I may, just for clarification, the chart came from SLM, so...
Yeah. So why don't we ask them what they're doing?
We haven't.
Where's the answer? That's what I was getting at.
They are well aware of the issue. They would love to get more usage. The practical issue is not about cost. It's simply the fact that schools are very reluctant to take children off site. If you think about all the safeguarding parameters they have to deal with these days, getting a coach, even if it's a short distance, it just gets nonsensical. So the difficulty, frankly, is there isn't a school next door that you can open the gate and let the kids through. That's the basic problem. We're getting kids to use that.
So it's not a price point issue necessarily. It's a safeguarding practicality.
Yeah, schools, and it's true right across the district. Schools are very reluctant to take kids on site. It's just so cumbersome for them these days.
Thank you, Councillor Paul.
Yeah, just a quick comment to concur with Simon. With my grandchildren, as I have been closely for 6 months. When you say 8 children, 1 adult, 8 children, 1 adult, it's difficult. It's difficult for them when they go swimming, so let alone to go off site. But I do take it on board that is a possibility. However, I am disturbed by the fixation in this country of football as being the be-all and end-all. The recent planning application turned down for coverage of the tennis courts, as you well know, Chairman. Is it possible that better use of these for covered tennis courts all year round facilities, revenue streams, and come away from this obsession with football? If they want to play football, Wendy has just said Spider Park, the Hollows.
There are other locations.
Burton, whatever you call it, Burton Field.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. What I'm intending to do is we'll agree that we'll note the advice, number one. Number two, but actually, can we dovetail into that, please, the fact that as a result of this document, we'll invite Councillor Hills in for the next meeting with a view to setting up a new assignment looking at the issue much more broadly about inclusion in sports and looking at how we can utilise the assets we have much more effectively. Good. Happy with that, buddy? Should we move on to the next item? Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Anna, for leading that one. So that's that. Good.
Right, so the next one that we've got is the complaints procedure and process review.
Yes, so give us a good flavour of it, and then I've got a couple of questions, and then we will have a debate. Thank you.
Obviously, we've got 3 points that are recommendation. The first recommendation, actually, this was the new chart was used at governance last week, wasn't it? Yep. And I think it was received well, from my understanding.
Drafted declaring interest on this one.
Oh, wow.
I do sit on corporate governance, and I did raise it last week. It's okay.
Okay.
Carry on, sorry.
So as far as one seems to be moving forward, that was one that actually seems to have been already accepted.
It's already been implemented. Yep.
So then we go on to recommendation 2, that staff are trained on the revised customer feedback and complaints procedure to improve the recording, follow up of feedback of complaints and ensure each has been concluded. Now there obviously is quite a bit of documentation there, but speaking around that one, what we found was it's how there seemed to be, when is a complaint a complaint?
Can I stop you there? Is it defined anywhere in the policy and procedures what a complaint is?
Well, no, not really. No. And it almost seemed to be, at some points, is depending on how loudly you shout it.
Is that correct? I mean, do you have any evidence for that? Is that
some people ask you want to log it as a complaint, and some you don't get asked if you want to log it as a complaint. And it's also, when does it become a complaint? If somebody phoned in to say that a bin hasn't been emptied, for instance, and that is just a request for it to be emptied, and the following month you phone in again with exactly the same thing, and the request is for it to be emptied, and the following month, when does it become a complaint?
Whose job is it? Whose job is it to say this is a complaint? Is it our job as a council to invite that word or describe it as such, or is it for the customer to say I am complaining?
It's still not seen as a complaint if it can be called a request, because it is a request for something to be done rather than a complaint that you're complaining that something hasn't been done. Now, if it was something that's supposed to be done that hasn't been done, I would say I'm complaining.
Okay.
So it's how a complaint is perceived as a complaint.
I think this is quite important detail, actually. So we've got Julie bringing in.
Sorry, just if I can add that in terms of the ESC contract, there is a very firm definition about what is a complaint and what is a service request. And given that a significant proportion of our calls that come in are about that contract, there is a very firm definition in the contract as to what is a complaint and what is a service request.
So in actual fact, when we see them logged as a complaint in that respect, we could actually do an audit trail and see every single one that came in had been categorised correctly. We could do a sample on that. So in that case, then, that being a significant portion, that relates that. So in these other areas, which there are less of, what is the situation there? How are they? How do we know if we've got a complaint and simply a request? Okay.
That's it. It just seems to be foggy. When does it? Do you keep phoning up and requesting the same thing over and over, and it just stays as a request, or should it become a complaint?
What if the same person called in 10 times, 10 weeks in a row? Would that be a request or a complaint? But in the case of the waste, it's defined clearly in what you're saying.
If a customer states that they want to make a complaint, then it is a complaint. Now, as you quite rightly say, a customer might not always say, I'm making a complaint, but the call centre will ask the various questions. And to answer your question, to be honest, generally, if they've rang up 2 or 3 times about the same issue, most of the customers will at that point say, I want this logged as a complaint, and they will state that.
Councillor Randall, in your analysis on this, did you interview any customers or do any direct research? Did you listen to calls, etc.?
We did listen to calls.
I think it's documented in here, one on point 6. I think we raised some points. So, tell us about the methodology you followed.
We both, Kevin and myself, both spent an hour or so in the control room, listening in to calls, and actually there was lots of things that actually I listened into that I'd want to be made aware of if I was a councillor, but there didn't seem to be anything that could allow them to because I said to her, after listening to that complaint, if that was on my ward, I would like to know about it. But there was...
what's the fundamental issue?
Some people phoned in, and it was about a complaint that was that they'd already phoned up about the week before. Sometimes, if a customer had phoned in to report that a bin was overflowing, so then what happens then is Enterprise, Maybe, whatever we want to call them, pick up that complaint. Those men then go out to empty that bin. If they can't find that bin, the case gets closed. Now, we at DDC don't know that case has been closed until the person phones back in to say, this bin hasn't been emptied. Then when they go back in to that number, they can see actually that Enterprise has closed the case, and they may have put location not found. So to me, so that was another thing that we were saying, that this is how, cases are closed without DDC knowing that these cases are closed.
So it strikes me
complex.
There's an issue here between how maybe databases talk to each other, not necessarily about the way the complaints are handled per se. So, what is actually, when you take a step back, so we're not only focusing on the waste contract, what is the fundamental issue that we need to address with these recommendations?
It's still the fact that if you want, somebody could phone in with the same issue. They could just phone in and just say, this has been happening, and it gets logged as, logs as a request. I could phone in and say, I'm absolutely fed up with this now, and I want to put a complaint in on the same issue. And it seemed to be that the same issue, depending on whether you said it was a complaint and whether you didn't, whether it got logged as a complaint and whether it didn't. Would you agree with me on that one, Kevin?
Yeah, I don't think there's any... criteria is very loose to say what a complaint is, and I think it's down to an individual, whether you're waiting for the customer to say I want to make a complaint, or the person on the end of the phone saying do you wish me to register this as a complaint. So I don't think that's clear. So I think the complaint is an issue, because I've noticed in here, which I think is the latest one.
Yeah, the one that's in your pack.
Yeah, on this here. You've now got informal complaints, I think, which is now raising its head. Which I'm always worried about informal complaints, because I'm wondering if they're going to be recorded.
Well, it actually doesn't say here. Tony, it's your document, isn't it?
It's not Chairman, but I do also...
Can you be a spokesperson for it?
I can try,
I've got Councillor Wesley want to make a point, but can you tell us how that will be dealt with then? Informal complaints, will they be recorded or not?
My understanding is they won't be formally recorded as complaints. If you look at section 5 of the document, page 51 of the papers, it talks about the procedure, it talks about an informal complaint, and then stage 1 as a formal complaint. When we record, certainly the information as was received by Corporate Governance Committee last week, that looked at stage 1 as being the base information for complaints. So I think initially I hear what's been said about lack of clear definition. But I think initially what is left there is for a resolution. So the inquiry stroke complaint coming from a service user may be a complaint, something may have failed, or it may be an inquiry as to, I would like something to happen. And it's trying to determine which is which out of those, and if the customer is feeling strongly aggrieved, then no doubt that will be recorded as a complaint.
I think the reality, there is always going to be a little bit of subjectivity here, but our job has to be to make it as clear as possible. Can I...
Sorry, just to finish the point, really, if we're going back to the recommendation is about training, and I think it's about having a consistent approach to those who deal with the calls that will help sort of satisfy the concerns. So I don't think particularly there's a problem from a management point of view with a recommendation 2. It is something that we're looking to put in place once the new procedure is rolled out.
Thank you, Tony. I think my point was that if there is a script missing for the employees, I mean, you can train the employees, but you have to be clear what you're training them, right? Let's go to Councillor Wednesday.
Yeah, I think it is all about certainty for me. And if there's something in place and it's being looked at and it's got to work properly, then certainty is the other thing. It's the best in the world. If you give any staff a certain amount of leeway, then and targets and pressure on that, people will bend and burn according to that. And I think you do have to be certain in all these things, and training is an essential part of that. So part of the recommendation is there, but there needs to be certainty within that. And I think if anyone has bothered to pick up the phone and say something hasn't been done, I actually think that is a complaint. End of the story. And it may be that complaint is resolved instantaneously, but it is still resolved. It doesn't have to go through X number of stages, so any complaint should go through a stage procedure until it is actually resolved. And sometimes that might be resolved to the expectation of this council, and sometimes it might be, or it might be resolved to the expectation of the customer as well. But either way, that should be recorded. But every stage, no matter what sort of complaint it is, be it a service level complaint, my bin isn't emptied, I will sort that out. It's been emptied, yes it is, resolved. Because I think that has resolved the issue. Or you might have resolved and that won't.
That's it, Lance. So I'll put you in at Councillor. Well, Councillor Frenchman first.
Yes, I think we ought to look at complaints in a positive way, if I can put it that way, because they are actually a learning process. And it may be that we need that everybody who phones in with an issue, if I can put it that way, is a complaint. Because by logging it, we can then see patterns emerging. So it might only be my bin's been missed, but if you find out over the following weeks there is a consistency of that area, for instance, being missed, then that's something you need to take up with the necessary authorities. And I think we need to learn from the mistakes. It's nice to in an individual case to solve their problem, but we need to make sure it's not a larger issue. And the other thing is, I don't think it's incumbent on us or Daventry to expect the caller to say it's a complaint. They don't know that they should be saying it's a complaint for it to be logged as a complaint. So I'm really with Mark in saying that if somebody phones in with an issue, it needs to be logged and it needs to be reviewed.
Chairman, wait a minute, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Frenchman. Paul, then Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. A little bit of experience. Ex-portfolio holder, I know of some 2 and a little bit years regarding access and communication. When a customer picks up the phone, uses the one-stop shop, sends an email in, we have a CRM system, customer relationship management system, where all calls are logged. Hence the reason why you end up with a piece of paper like this. What's the use of this piece of paper? Well, clearly it shows you that out of something like 1,200 calls, close to 1,000 were regarding our waste management and the enterprise contract.
Councillor Paul, I think that's the issue. I think you just because they're on there logged as complaints doesn't mean there aren't more than that.
No, it doesn't mean that. It does mean, though, that the senior management team in my day looked at those issues in and around, but what we're talking about is operational matters or compliance matters. Now, I would suggest that operational matters, where he didn't collect my bin, etc., which is then passed down the line to the relevant manager, which is then passed down the line to the senior management team, is the way to go. Yeah? But if it's a matter of compliance, whether we've not complied with the letter of the law, either in planning, licensing or whatever, then I would suggest that is a complaint. The others are procedural matters where, not procedural matters, operational matters where we have not fulfilled a contract. Now, the definition of a complaint or a complaint. Well, clearly, senior management look at these in my day monthly to see if there are any issues. In fact, Madam Guildford and I, Councillor Guildford and I, were in close contact with each other with regards to the implementation of enterprise, where the call centre spiked absolutely horrendously in the first few days, and then came down and within a week got back to normal.
Councillor Paul, I'm going to stop you there. Let's move on because I think I know where you're coming from, but we need to keep them because I think at the minute we've got to the point where we say one's been adopted, two I think we broadly agree on. We've got to look at the third one. So conscious of time, particularly because Councillor Arnold does need to go. So Simon, then
briefly reassurance to Councillor Frenchman, Chairman. I can reassure you that every has been requested is logged. They're logged as service requests. They may also be logged as plans. They are all logged as service requests. And they're monitored in the internal service plan we have for the MS, which the portfolio holder may mention later. So they are logged. And they can be.
But I was thinking of everything, not just about any bit, but any request for anything.
Any service request certainly against environmental services is logged.
I'm talking about everything.
Yeah, and that's the point, everybody. This is about everything.
Yeah,
Let's not get bogged down in bits. Let's go back to Councillor Randall because I'm keen to get the third issue dealt with. This probably will require a couple of minutes of conversation. So, Councillor Randall, back to you. Then, can you tell us how you've come to the conclusion from the report that you've done and the underlying fundamental issues that the third item is relevant and important?
Right. So this is obviously putting in place an extra stage, actually, and which would be an independent panel to look at that, because it's obviously we have got, the percentage might be low, but that is still stage 3 complaints. And as you go through the different complaints, some people, by the time they get to stage 2 complaint, it's quite a long time to go from that initial response, and you get on to stage 1 complaint, then you're waiting another 28 days before it's like stage 2 complaint. Some people just give up because it's just taking too long, or, to have these complaints, you've got 13 complaints, and of how many of these were upheld, I think nearly 50%, from my understanding.
So, Councillor Randall, what would the we haven't even discussed the nature of the independent panel yet, but what would the independent panel do to solve that problem?
Just before it goes outside of this council, it would give, looking at the reputation of the council, if something actually hasn't fundamentally been carried out correctly, it gives the chance for it to be sorted out within this council rather than it going outside. I know other people use this method, DDH use this method, and it works very effectively.
Can you tell me, how can we be, when you say, okay, I think I understand that. Let's talk about the independents. Who is on this panel and what's their remit and where do they come from? And how long, what's the time scale for them meeting to resolve the complaint? And what
knowledge and training and understanding of the complaint will they have to be able to resolve it?
I don't think you need any understanding. What you do is you read through the correspondence. That's what you do. You wouldn't be necessarily trained. It would be like people like that you have a standards panel or an appeals panel. You could use that panel, and you would just have the documentation that was seen from here and the documentation that comes from that customer. That panel would look at that and decide whether actually, yes, everything that's done within this council has been done correctly and everything's been answered correctly. This is somebody who's just got to be in their bonnet. Okay, then go on to the Ombudsman and see what they say. But if the fact that it hasn't been handled well in here and it goes outside and then it's upheld, obviously, it's the reputation.
From reading this, and we'll sort of members thinking a minute, I find it very hard to understand how you'd got from the fundamental issue around tracking of the complaints, maybe the way the complaints are defined and done, to having this independent panel which would bring in this extra dimension that would solve these problems, because I understand we're only talking about a very small number, and in actual fact I got no understanding at all from this document how an independent panel would be constituted and what their remit would be, and it felt to me that it had just been thrown in as an idea and hadn't been fully worked out. Let's see what anybody else, any other comments on this. Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the complaints procedure has grown since I was invoked, so to speak. Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3 of the complaints procedure, totally adequate. If I look at page 62 and I look at the complaints referred to the Ombudsman, 3 complaints upheld, not upheld, 4 complaints, provided advice on 2, closed 2, initial inquiry 7, total of 18. Now, if we go to the third recommendation, we're probably talking of an independent panel. Would that independent panel be councillors or those from outside? It would certainly increase the workload of officers, having already gone through procedure stage 1 and stage 2. And if you look at this A3 spreadsheet, the numbers of on there that actually get to stage 2 are very, very few. I do accept what Councillor Randall has said regarding they would have all the documentation in front of them. So do I at planning, but I still have a legal advisor. If there was a complaint, for instance, about the Department of Work and Pensions, invariably it's, well, I don't like what you say. Well, I'm complaining. Invariably, that is the form of the complaint. They don't like the answer. But with regard to Department of Work and Pensions, I'm certainly not qualified. I don't know any of our 36 councillors who are qualified.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. So it's a case of
complaints board.
Thank you very much, Councillor Paul. It's a case of competence. I think what struck me actually was the fact that we got 3.2 where we spoke about there is and 3.3 where present members have no involvement in the complaints process, but the recommendation itself doesn't actually regard members at all. So even if we had a recommendation, the third recommendation was that members are involved, perhaps briefed by, if it was on their ward reviews in their portfolio area, that they're briefed on the nature of complaints, they can take action, accordingly corrective action, that might make sense. But I don't understand this. So we've gone from 3.2, 3.3 working with an argument for members to be involved, and then we speak about this independent panel, and I've no idea how it's constituted, when they meet, how that will impact on the complaint cycle. Will it actually take longer for the complaint to be resolved? Will it, have the customers been spoken to about this particular? I've got no information on this, and I would say this committee would find it very hard to accept the recommendation based on such limited information.
Well, I think on 3.3 the recommendation was to use elected members, and as it says, at present members have no involvement in the complaints process. So the ones that go outside this council, what do we know about? And we are responsible, and all you hear lately is about transparency, within councils. Well, I don't know what's gone outside. I don't know if you do. I'm not aware of what's gone outside. I'm not aware of what's upheld. I'm not aware of whether we're at fault, whether we weren't at fault. So the idea was to use members as an independent panel, an independent panel of councillors.
Councillor Randall, unless I've missed it, doesn't say that here.
No, it doesn't.
No, I think I appreciate your bringing this to the table. You didn't originally prepare the document. I think there's a mismatch here between what the intention of the document is and actually the way the recommendations are worded. Depending on what members think, I would recommend here the fundamental issue is not about the process in terms of the final stage. It's about visibility of complaints working through the system to members. One moment. Does anybody have any questions before actually members of the committee before Councillor Paul comes in? So basically, my premise is that I think the third item is not born from the evidence we've seen before us. I can't see how it would work, and perhaps the better solution would be the members have a better insight into the situation. Any Councillor Company?
No, I fully agree with what you're saying now. I mean, as a member, I've been a member of this council for as long as 13, 14 years now, and you never get to know. I appreciate what Councillor Randall was saying, but you don't get to know what's going on with your complaints-wise unless it's brought to your attention individually by somebody in your ward. So I think what this report is trying to do is trying to introduce an extra layer of bureaucracy, perhaps, that we do need the extra transparency.
Extra transparency. Thanks, Councillor Goodman, because I think the point is, if your objective is to have better communication to the councillors about complaints, having a panel which consists of councillors, although it doesn't make that clear here, that is the case, they would only be focusing, this last year, they'd only be looking for 13 complaints.
That's right, there won't be many.
Well, the money is not the issue. The issue is you want visibility over the complaints that are being handled, so we get a perspective on what needs to be addressed. But actually having a look at such a small sample would not meet that requirement that we're looking at. So we have to focus on the objective. So if the objective is, and it looks very clear from the document it is, if the objective is making it transparent the types of communications that are coming in, then maybe it's as simple as saying that the members, the ward members and portfolio holders are appraised of maybe even stage 2 complaints or stage 2 and stage 3 complaints, so you have an insight into the bigger issues. Let me open up to the floor. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, Chairman, with the greatest respect, on page 36, the third paragraph down, from a customer perspective, members are elected to provide a democratic involvement. Yes, I absolutely agree with that. However, forgive me for keep saying, but as a past portfolio holder in this role, it was not beyond the realms of members of various wards to ask the question of officers. Now, if you're doing your job right as a councillor, you know how are things going in my ward, etc., then you would get the feedback. Yeah? That is totally different with taking up officer time and member time than when you're looking at complaint stage 3, you're talking at 15 complaints. Now, it is how you deal with all complaints. Yeah, and it is the perspective of the council. I don't see that by adding yet another one, if they don't agree with this third recommendation, we then go to the Ombudsman. We're adding that stage into it. I as a councillor, I can't offer advice or sit on a panel with regards to work and pensions, tax or whatever.
Okay,
I don't think I'm qualified.
I think I understand the point. Look, I think that to me it's very clear. So we have an objective. Let's take a step back. The objective is we want to manage complaints as best we can and learn from them. I think that's the point. And as councillors, we need to know complaints, particularly when they're trends and patterns, to make sure we can help influence the policies in our role as councillors. There's only two issues: the way the policy and procedure is built, or it's the way it's implemented. Implemented could be all sorts of things, how it's communicated, etc., etc. So then, basically, if the objective is for our awareness, we need to have more information, then surely the third one shouldn't actually, we should remove the third recommendation. It should be very simply that members and portfolio holders are informed of stage 2 and stage 3 complaints in order to ensure they are aware. And that's as simple as that. What do you think, Catherine? That would meet the objective.
It would be, for councillors to be made aware of stage 2 complaints within their wards.
Stage 2 complaints within their wards, because stage 3 is the ombudsman, right?
Yeah.
So would you mind if we reword it to that?
No, I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you. Wendy, so let me make sure we captured that correctly.
Members and portfolio holders should be made aware of stage 2 complaints in their ward.
And portfolios, you've got that here.
Yeah.
So portfolios, not their ward, but portfolios within their areas of responsibility. Okay, so members in their ward and portfolios in their area of responsibility to make them aware of the situation. Simple. Good. That meets your objective.
Well, it does, because sometimes, all this is done by, a lot of this is all email, and sometimes it's just talking to somebody, actually. So if it's in the ward, you can go and have a visit and just say, what's your problem, and talk about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Good.
Thank you. So let's clean this up. So we've got recommendation 1. We can actually remove that because it's been implemented already. So actually we have 2 recommendations. Number 2, that staff are trained, as is. And the final one, which Wendy has got, which was basically members and portfolio holders are basically suitably appraised. Can we take those as agreed? Happy with that? Councillor Parker, you can do that look as if, are you okay? Yeah. You're not on the committee anyway, but you...
No, I'm not on the committee, so I don't get a vote.
Councillor Wesley.
I'm still a little bit concerned that we just don't know from this, we still don't know what a complaint actually is within the process.
Well, maybe I can give some feedback to the panel that the absolute primary objective should have been to define the term complaint. We have got the book already, and maybe we just need to absolutely clearly define it. Tony, you said this is not your... Just remind me, who owns this document?
It's a corporate document, but it's Maria Taylor's team who deal with it.
That's right, sorry Tony, it's not you. I keep getting into trouble.
Chair, it may assist, for the purpose of the environmental reserves contract, we actually ended up referring to the Oxford English Dictionary definition of complaint.
Often the best place. Okay, thank you. So, are we agreed on that? I'm conscious of Councillor Randall being the mayor when she walks out. So,
thank you.
You're happy with this? Are we happy with that? Agreed? Good. Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you for coming.
And it's probably just as well as
Well, I kind of figure that we had to focus to get that one done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for doing those.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
So let me see where we are on the agenda now. So I think, let's take a step back. So we've done the 12 months. We've done the consideration of corporate complaints, which means the running order is corporate strategic plan. This is you now, Julie. We didn't do too bad. Thank you very much. So for newer members, well that's just the 2 of you of course, councillors in particular, we have the corporate plan, which is this here, and this is a new document actually. And Julie, you put this together this way, haven't you? So thank you very much for doing that. It's certainly very different to the last time when we looked at it. So please, you've got the floor. Talk us through the document. Talk us through the highs and the lows. And for Councillor Cribbin and Councillor Weston particularly, the purpose of this section was to give you areas to think of based on performance, which is of course our remit. And if anything screams out you need to look at, then that might be a panel you want to look at. Councillor Frenchman, you'll know this anyway, but we've had...
Well, I didn't reckon I wondered what it was when I started reading it.
This actually is the result of one of our scrutiny.
Yes, but a magnifying glass would be useful.
It was on A4.
This is the problem, you see. You make it more complicated and it gets smaller on the A3 sheet. So. Julia, I'll hand over to you. So at your
Perhaps it would help if I just spent 2 minutes just explaining the new format.
Yes, please.
Which will be easy for the new gentleman here. But what we've done, following requests, is actually now, you'll see at the top showing 2013, 14, 14, 15, 15, 16 and 16, 17. So we're showing you kind of 4 years data. So you can see how things have performed in the previous year, etc. Obviously, just be mindful that in some cases we had a new corporate plan start in 2014, so in some cases there isn't data before that because it's a new corporate measure. But where there is, I've followed the data through. And then what I've done is I've shown the targets and the actuals. So you've got the targets for previous years, and I've also shown, as far as I can, the targets for the years going forward as well, so you can see how we set the targets and what we're aiming for this year and next year as well.
So, Julie, this is so much better. Straight away, if you pick, for instance, B1.1 commercial floor space, you can see that the whole last couple of years it's been red. Straight away, that stands out much more obviously now than it used to do.
But I think equally, the thing to look there, taking that as a good starter, you could also see how it has actually improved.
Or you can see where it's green as well. Sorry to apologise.
No, just, yes, it is red.
I was looking at it on page 9, that was all.
It shows you how it has actually improved from 13, 14, going through 14, 15, and the graph underneath also shows, A, what the target is over the 3 years, and underneath what the actual figures are per each year, so you can see whether there's been an improvement or a decline quite quickly.
Good. So the grey bars are the actual performance. And
the bars are the actual, and the graph, the line. The line at the top is the target.
Very good. Does that make sense to everybody? Excellent. Good work, Julie.
I'm really relieved at that.
First job done. Yeah, I tell you, I'm very impressed actually. You took the recommendation through the council, and here it is in black and white. So it's great to see actually.
Surely Chairman colour.
Sorry?
The surely in colour, Chairman. But,
well, yes, point actually. So yeah, black, white, and colour in fact. Yeah. Right, so tell us the highs and lows.
Right, now also bear in mind this is the report for the end of 14-15, so this is the data for the end of March. It's not the data for the last few months.
Yes, it's a lagging indicator, and we're not looking at Q1
we are looking purely at year-end 14-15. So we have 28 measures in total, and we finished 14-15 with 6 of those were red, 1 was amber, and 21 was green. 21 were green. So on the whole, very positive finish to the year.
Actually, that used to be easy to see before, didn't it? Now, strangely enough, it's unintended consequences.
You have to count them through now.
Yeah.
So there were 6 reds and 1 amber, but still, a good strong finish for the end of the year. So what I normally do is just talk about the reds, just give you a picture where we are. The first one, this is commercial floor space with planning permission, due to council action excluding town centre, retail and leisure. You'll see that Q3 and Q4 we didn't have any change there. It remained at 5,505. And this is still down to the master plan still being redrafted. There is another draft out at the minute, and still looking for that sort of commercial commitment to come forward to actually increase that actual the actual figure there. So
this is Councillor James's area, isn't it? So working with Simon. So again, if members are so minded at a later meeting in the cycle, we can of course invite them in to scrutinise on this. What appears underperformance, but I know we've had this discussion in the past. It can be quite hard, and it's not entirely under our control, of course.
It isn't. A very briefly comment, Jerry, really helpful. I mean, it summarised this indicator by saying it took us a lot longer than we hoped to get the Henry Boot scheme through planning, but it is now. And the Henry Boot scheme, as finally approved, is slightly smaller than the target set, and therefore that will not change. There will be a continuous red. This year, the target rises because of expectations around site 3. Now, in fact, because we are holding back on the site 3 master plan to make sure we get it right, I warn you now, it's quite likely we'll not make this year's target either.
Yes.
But it's a question of the balances here. We could press on, deliver some planning consents, and actually deliver the wrong development. And I think neither the portfolio holder or anyone here would want to do that.
It's important to get the scheme correct, obviously.
Exactly so.
Right.
So that's likely where that one ends up.
Yeah, and actually these are numbers at the end of the day, but thank you. Councillor Paul, you have a comment?
Well, yeah, on the same B1.1 is that yes, it looks a disaster. What it doesn't take is reality, and the reality in life is that there's an economic downturn. The developer for Churchill packed up and walked away. Had that come to fruition, it's all ands, ifs and buts, but had that come to fruition, then the town centre would have experienced a higher footfall, and no doubt the economic climate would have changed. But nationally, the economic climate is not reflected in the 13-14 figures, and if you probably go back to 12-13. So there are underlying factors, and whilst it is red, there are distinct reasons, and Simon has just pointed out a lot of those reasons. So yes, it doesn't look good, but at the end of the day, we do understand the reasons why.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. I almost mistook you for the portfolio holder there, actually, on that subject. So well versed. You almost like been trained by former councillor over himself on that answer.
Well, we was at lunch yesterday.
Let's move on to. Thank you. Let's move on to the next one.
And I have to pay.
To be honest, it's a very similar story on the next one, in that we secured planning permission with sites 1 and 5, and we're now waiting for further development on site 3, again affected by the master plan and the way forward. If I can just point out, if you do look at the targets for 15-16, they do now read 19,300. It's not 15,300.
Oh, these were incorrect at the time
Yeah.
of production.
No, that actually told us 19,300.
That's correct.
Oh, I take that back.
Okay, good.
It should be 15,300.
And the reason it's correct, Chairman, if I may say so, is because we don't expect to get planning permission for any further development. There's no point in setting targets.
So everything's potentially in pot. So actually, it gets easier to meet this year.
It does, yes. And that's just the way it's meant to be.
And this actually is why, Simon, actually, we really wanted to have it like this, because you can see much better into the future than in the past, whereas before you couldn't without previous document.
Right. Okay. So 1.3 is fine. B2.1, B2.2, both finished in the green.
Just mind switch page number, please, Julie.
Next page, page 10 on your report.
Thank you.
Then just follow through.
2.1 and 2.2, you said?
Yeah.
Chair, can I comment in 2.2, just a brief comment.
Push and make that support.
Purely simply, I accept that the UTC has 600 places, but the alarming situation with our 2 secondary schools is that numbers are dramatically falling. Intake into Southern College this year was something like 300 places. Your good lady is in Lauren Shepherd, is she not? She probably expects or sees an upturn there as well.
Thank you, support. Julie?
Okay, moving on. B3.1 is green. B3.2 is green. There is a page for each one now.
It's very good layout, actually, I think. Hopefully everyone thinks so.
So going on to the E's, E2.1, the amount of waste going to landfill. This is bottom of page 12, where you have the red line. This is our environmental services contract. They did have more waste going to landfill than targeted, and that has finished in the red.
Okay, thank you. Normally when Councillor Randall's here, we usually get a discussion about this. Anybody want to raise any questions? We've got Joe here anyway. Let's go from here.
Just in quarter 3, 14-15, the target is 228 and the actual was 375. So why is it red?
It's cumulative and it's above target.
It's
cumulative.
It's a low is good.
You want low is good.
Oh, low is good.
Low is
Sorry.
good in this particular indicator.
Ah, right. Sorry.
Because it's waste going to landfill is bad.
So on the measures, if you actually look third line down to status, we've actually put low is good, where, because it is confusing, and so we've done it for that reason.
You have to read
fraud, isn't it?
Yeah, you have to read the definition carefully, and that's why, Councillor Frenchman, that we wanted it again over a longer period of time. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed with the waste going to landfill. Observations at our own recycling centre in Daventry. I use the word lightly, recycling centre. The amount of stuff that could be recycled there is going to landfill. Councillor Randall has mentioned it several times. Lack of supervision back to lamps in and around the site, brings about issues of health and safety. But
Councillor Paul, can I recommend that we save this one for Councillor Guildford's section, because we're going to have a full briefing off on you. You'd be my pleasure to allow you to ask the questions then. So let's focus on the numbers.
Can I just say that they are the county councils though?
That's fine, we can have all that in your session. Let's do a big wash up on the waste on Councillor Guildford's section, otherwise we'll never make it for the numbers.
Okay, the next
Julie,
one,
back to you.
E3.1, street and environmental cleanliness, is also unfortunately with Councillor Guildford's session, but they finished 36% people satisfied. Target was 90%. They were quite a way off it. I'm sure the next presentation will explain what we're doing about that and what
We have the numbers, Councillor Guildford, when it comes to your session. Okay.
What we're doing. So the next two are quite happily in the green. Unless anyone's got any comments on that, say anything. Page 14, E4.2, conservation area appraisals carried out. The story was the same all year here, that this was due to the pressure of dealing with speculative planning applications. It states that a budget report was agreed by Council in February to provide additional resources to help this one along. That has been agreed. They have advertised, in some cases actually appointed an additional resource.
One meeting, folks, please. Yes, so will we expect this to ease up soon? Well, not ease up.
It will take time. It's not going to happen overnight, but we're hoping towards certainly the latter half of the year that we will see an improvement.
Because we have the target of 11 here in the final quarter.
That's good.
Okay, we'll be watching out closely, of course. Next one.
Next two, page 15, are both happily green. I think then we have a nice, we have one slightly amber, H2.2, on page 16. Still a lot of good work there, and it was unfortunate that it dropped down right at the end to just hit amber, but a lot of good work still going on there in terms of how they support the elderly and the vulnerable. And then on to the next one that's red is H3.2, which is affordable housing. We don't get this figure till the end of the year, and this one is obviously always dependent on when they actually finish the schemes. So the fact that it is red doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that the actual number of houses haven't actually been finished and delivered at this point.
And I see. That's why you've got for quarter 4 2000. That's why you've got 82, and that is the final turnout for the year.
Yes, 82 is the final that were completed at the end of 14-15.
And here we've plotted in for the first 3 quarters 82, but obviously
because again they won't report now. Their next report will be quarter 4 at the end of next year. So it will stay 82. They won't have anything else to report until we get to 15-16. So that number will not change.
Okay, and this can you just be absolutely clear. What do you mean by, in terms of the absolute definition? So affordable housing delivered to meet the green need. What is 82? What's the union measure?
82 affordable houses.
82 affordable houses.
Yes. Units.
Yeah, units. So that's the actual measure. Is everybody clear on that one?
Good flat, you right.
Yes. Yeah. Councillor Guildford.
Only a little comment. It seems a bit harsh to report it as red when it's simply because it's not been reported till the end of the year.
But we have strict definition on this as well.
Do you?
Yeah.
We've tried to be consistent in the philosophy we've followed. Whichever way you take it, there are some oddities that will arise. And yet, I take Councillor Guilford's point. It does seem a bit harsh, but as long as we know what it is.
The number speaks for itself in this case, actually. I mean, you could either use orange, but you can't use green because it's not been met, has it? Simple. So it's either red or orange.
We took a consistent, I mean, another one is, for instance, the satisfaction survey with EMS. We did the same thing there because that will stay red now until the next survey is due. They can't improve on it until the next results are out. So once they've hit that, but likewise, had they have hit green, it would have gone green for the year and looked really good for the next 3. But we just wanted a consistent approach in what we're telling you, and we're telling you about 28 measures every month or every quarter.
Absolutely. Consistency is important. And actually, I'd rather it be red because it stands out more and learns to the situation. Thank you for the comment anyway, Councillor Guilford. Please go on, Julie.
So affordable housing, I think that is it. Just going down, we finished overall 75%, just actually within target, within 5% or better. We were just off.
This is the final item on page 20.
Yeah, which is accumulation
of all the targets.
So overall, I think it was very positive and we finished very strongly.
Well, I must say that's a very good looking document actually, and I'd like to think we can take some credit for that actually. But most of all, Julie, you take the credit for putting it together in such a coherent way, presenting it to us every quarter. Do we have any final comments on that? No, may I request that, I'm sure you looked at it already, but please make sure you absolutely have a good look at it before you come in to the meetings, and make sure to give Julie good harsh questions on it if you don't understand anything, and if something's tracking behind. Julie will do her homework and obviously focus on the ones that are red, so she's got all the answers. So in that case, then, if we don't have any further questions from Julie, you may go if you wish, and thank you for spending a little bit extra time here and rejigging as we rejig the agenda. The mayor will break. But actually, I wanted to get those two out of the way, as you can probably imagine.
Thank you for that. I'm going to stay because of the environment.
Okay, good. You want to say? Very good indeed. So the next one we've got here is number 6, Community Partnership Report. We've got the report, and we also have Kevin to speak as well. So this is a yearly event. Please. An event. Yeah, you are indeed. Please give us a quick update report and bring to our attention any salient points.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've tried to keep this one as brief as possible. Of course, there's always a danger then we're missing off some of the things that people might find more salient. So I've got a wealth of information if people want to dive down behind that, and if members want to give me a steer on the sort of thing that they would like to see in future reports. I'm very conscious that I'm on the introduction, I'm repeating things which have been on this report for several years, and so maybe we can just take those as read and actually give a bit more information behind that. I also noticed reading through this afternoon before I came that there's a phrase, there's a part of a sentence missing, which will mean something that actually makes sense to most people. So maybe I'm preempting some of the questions that people might have asked. On 5.1, second paragraph, we're talking about reporting of violence. It's one of the things that's been a major problem with the performance reporting for policing and community safety partnerships across the county, that after an HMIC inspection, Northamptonshire Police changed the way they recorded violent crime, which has led to this seemingly enormous increase. But there's a missing part of the sentence. A far greater proportion of reports of violence to the control room are now recorded as crimes rather than incidents, which is how that sentence should read. The control room are not seeing an increase in total numbers of reports coming in, it's just that the proportion of those reports which are recorded as crimes is much higher. So overall call volume is the same, but more crime because more things being recorded. It's simply a call.
Very similar to the beginning of the meeting, actual fact, with customer complaints. It's how you report.
It's how you report.
Yeah.
But of course, performance is targets and measures are a guide to performance rather than absolute. So that's the culture that our colleagues in the police are working towards now. One of the the strong positives that we've had on that is the public perception. Things went very, very low right across Northamptonshire last year. Public perception of local authorities and police working together to deal with the issues that matter were extremely low. And they continue to drop in the rest of the county, but in Daventry District and in South, and of course good about Sand Partnership, we bounced back in the last quarter by 8%. We were at the bottom, and now we're closing in on the top again. So public opinion can be a fickle thing, and it's not a fantastic absolute measure, but it was causing us great concern that public perception was going so low. And talking to colleagues about why that might be, the work that we've been doing around rural crime and visibility, both reassurance to the rural communities that the issues that are taking place in the rural parts of the district actually do matter to us, and there is a response there. That's one factor that colleagues think has had a big impact on that. And the visibility through the push from the Police and Crime Commission to recruit more special constables. I'm told that we now have about 600 specials on the strength, but I queried that because, so what? How many hours do they do?
Just over 100,000 hours.
100,000 hours.
They've contributed in this last year. Sorry, Chair, I didn't see.
That's okay, thank you, Councillor Paul, for the clarification.
110,000 hours was the figure I was handed, which of course equates to roughly 70 full-time officers, which, given that the strength is just over 1,200, means that it's an additional 6-7% to the workforce, effectively.
It's a clear target here anyway, isn't it? I understand.
It does have a clear target to recruit the most, 900 is the target, the most specials.
It's still quite a way to go then.
It's still quite a way to go. It's a very, very healthy number, and apparently is in excess of most of the other forces, certainly comparable forces. And Daventry District South Northampton, because this is the information I'm getting from the Chief Inspector who covers both areas, has a very high proportion of those specials. One of the things that we're going through is parish constables. We've been having quite a lot of talks with the town and parish councils about that sort of recruitment. And 15 in training at the moment, only one actually out on patrol at the moment, he's in Alnwick. But that sort of recruitment, we had a big event at Force Headquarters for town and parish councillors 3 months ago, and very good attendance, and obviously a lot of resistance about what is the future policing, what is visibility policing, and obviously it's not an easy tale to hear that obviously the money's tight, and you're going to have volunteers, you're going to have to be involved, it's going to have to be a whole community response. And there were, by the end of that presentation, a lot of the parish and town councils were starting to come around to that rather than being hugely resistant to it. And so we're hopeful that we'll get more parish constables and mounted specials and mounted volunteers on horseback. We've got 4. They're not mounted specials, they're volunteers on horseback. It was a very high visibility issue, especially in the rural parts of the district. So the confidence is bouncing back. Very much missed the target on domestic violence last year, though, and that was the same due to the factors of the recording. One of the rather complex things to get across is that there's an additional factor for domestic violence. We've been very successful in changing the culture with police colleagues in terms of how they deal with domestic violence. Attendance, yes, for 999 calls, but when people are making reports, making sure everyone gets a visit and not taking no answer to the door as that's finished. You have to keep going back and you have to do a risk analysis. We got very good about that. It took a couple of years to turn the ship around, but we got very good at that. And a bit of a victim of our own success in that respect, because when you do a risk analysis, you ask for history. And then somebody may have reported one crime, but then giving the history, they're telling you about the number of incidents that have happened over a period of years. Because everyone accepts, I think, that it's rare that people will report domestic violence the first time it happens. The other recommendation from HMRC, though, was that any of those incidents recorded in the risk assessment should also be turned into crimes. So if someone was telling that over the last 10 years I've been assaulted 8 times, then those would be recorded as new crimes at the time the form was completed, which of course has bumped the figures further. Done a bit of delving into that though, but in terms of the absolute numbers, in terms of victims, it can't be a major factor because the number of victims and the number of crimes was actually quite similar. What we are saying as a positive is that the vast majority of the victims are new. In terms of repeat victims, we're hovering around 1%. We're taking that as a success. Partners around our mortgage risk assessment conferences are also taking that as a success, saying that you're getting an intervention and you're not needing to see the people again because the intervention, hopefully, was effective. Of course, the alternative side to that was it was so rubbish I'm not going to bother telling you, but there's no point. But in terms of what we are seeing and the recommendations that we have to our domestic homicide review, we're actually getting very, very positive messages from our partners who actually deal with the victims and third parties. The other mention that we had was rural crime. Again, rural crime was skewed somewhat by the violence figures, but we had an underlying, let's take the violence out, an underlying increase of around 8%. A lot of those were in things like criminal damage, and the absolute numbers are actually quite low, as in the same report. That we're talking about two big factors in the rural parts were non-dwelling burglaries, so that's sheds, stables, farm buildings, that sort of thing. And they could be sheds in domestic properties, or garages, or they could be, say, on commercial farm buildings, that sort of thing. So a big percentage increase, but all the rural wards, 263 crimes. So we have to put the caveat on the percentages while looking at the absolute numbers. First couple of months of this year, we're already seeing that come down. We've got a rural forum. We've got very good buy-in with the Country Landowners Business Association, National Farmers Union, Rivers and Waterways Trusts, or whatever they're called now.
Canal River Trust.
No, I got that wrong. And that level of buy-in and feeding into the networks which already exist, which are peer-to-peer networks, such as horse owners and that sort of thing, getting messages out there and letting people know that there is something that people bother about. Also got an innovation that we've just finished field trials on, very successful, and we've just put the order in for some more units. Very small game cameras. They're game trail cameras for anybody who hunts. You put these small units on a game trail. They've got triggers on them, so that light triggers, so when something goes past it takes a picture, takes a video, and you can get that to transmit direct to a mobile phone or an email address, so that you can see instantly what's on the game trail that you're looking at. We just use those for the rural areas, so rather than fitting expensive CCTV, we can lend out these units to see if they get triggered when people come in. It's no good having an alarm system if you're on a farm and you're several miles away on a tractor. That's always the thing that the people in those rural parts have said. But if you've got something that's actually going to send you a signal to your mobile phone, send you a still photograph while it's taking video, then you can decide whether it's something you need to react to or call in. So that's proven very successful. Field trials have worked. We're worried about coverage, we're worried about sensitivity, but it's worked successfully. We're going to be looking at new units. The idea is that we will lend them to people, and then people see they're effective and then they go out and buy themselves because they're not that expensive. Technology, £35 for a unit which will actually record video and transmit to your phones. That's increasing confidence. The concern in terms of targets for all crime from the inspectors is that increase in confidence will increase reporting. And if people say it is worth reporting because someone's going to do something about it, we might see numbers come up. So that's a rather complex picture. But so far, we're seeing a modest decrease. Now, for the coming year, there's a new definition been adopted for rural crime. We've been pushing the edge of the envelope. So we had to make our own definition up. And the Daventry district definition was rural crime is any crime that happens in a rural place. Seemed like a fairly straightforward definition to me. Then, of course, we had to argue about what rural is. For instance, is Malton rural, or is it an urban extension of Northampton? It's rural. How big does Brixworth get before it stops being rural? Those sort of questions. What we've adopted was that everything, the four wards of Daventry Town, that's urban, and the wards of Brackley and Toast of the South and Thames Count. This year we've got a more sophisticated model. Only certain sorts of crimes have been reported, so they've taken violence out, they've taken sexual offences out. So it's a crime of theft that happens in a rural location or in a farm. So even if it takes place in what's defined as an urban setting, but it's a farm that's on the edge of an urban ward, it'll still be counted. And mostly the definitions there have come through. So in Daventry, we're talking about everywhere apart from the 4 town wards. And we've got a target adopted for that. The CSP board met a couple of weeks ago and has adopted a 10% reduction for that. But for domestic violence, we're still seeing an increase in the first 2 months of the year, kind of by 7% still.
Kevin, a quick question. What's driving the domestic violence?
We were working on the expectation that it was about those recording processes, and that we don't know if we were being naive, that we thought that after 1 year we would establish a new baseline, because the practices have changed, give it 12 months, new baseline established. So if we're still seeing a 7% increase, and everywhere across Northamptonshire is seeing that level of increase, then was that model wrong? Well, to me, it makes mathematical sense of establishing a baseline, and we should then go flat from that. What partners are saying is that they're seeing an increase in confidence to report. Same with sexual offences. We're seeing an increase in sexual offences, but you can see a very clear line from when the U-Tree report was put out, and people are actually much more confident about reporting historic offences, reporting new offences, because they're going to get listened to and they're going to get an effective response.
So it may not be the incidents haven't necessarily increased, people's likelihood of reporting it has.
One of the things that we were told last year was that the rural parts of the county were considered to have massive underreporting, what they call dark statistics, that they estimated what it should be, and it was much, the actual figures were much lower. So the increase we were seeing, we were told, for instance, I know it's not particularly relevant to Daventry district, but for Brackley, the rural Brackley areas, they thought that was hugely underreported, and that was the area of the CSP data that we saw the biggest increase. They were coming in by a 60% increase, so it was way outside the norms of the county. So there is an underreporting and there's increasing confidence coming through. We're perhaps doing so. County-wide, the interpersonal violence strategy group, which has this under its wing, which I sit on, has decided not to set targets, no numerical targets for domestic violence this year either. They say that we don't have a sophisticated enough picture of what we should be seeing in order to be able to actually set a target. That's actually quite a sensible thing to do. There's no point just arbitrarily looking at a reduction or even trying to hold things down, because you get a dysfunctional, people start gaming the system if they held to a target, which the underlying data is not supported. So they've put an analyst in place for 1 year to dive into the data, so by the end of this financial year we should have a more sophisticated idea of what those targets should be.
Very good. Do we have any quick questions for Kevin? Thank you, Kevin.
Just a couple of quick comments, if I may. Domestic violence, I've offered my thanks to Northamptonshire Police Force in the way that they felt me personally and my daughter. Their behaviour was absolutely exceptional. The district and crime panel of which I was part of, we've heard that there will be 1,220 police officers, and that will not be reduced. Kevin has already mentioned over 100,000 hours. Some of those are cybercrime. So you could get a special, it wouldn't actually put a uniform on. Lots of specials have absolute power of arrest, unlike PCs, and a lot of PCs at the moment, Kevin would agree, I'm sure, are now transferring to be uniformed officers. But, you know, when some of those specials, I mean, for instance, you could become a special with corporate entity, etc. Tony could take up cybercrime with his experience of IT. It's not just a case of putting a uniform on a special. There might be those that have child abuse attributes, IT attributes, and so on. But
Councillor Paul, so there are different skills that people could take as volunteers.
I think the thing that Kevin touched on was Jimmy Savile was absolutely an evil, I can't say the word. However, the confidence coming through because they've seen what has happened to Jimmy Savile and the like. And hence these figures are going up and up and up because they've got the confidence now that something is actually going to be done.
Thank you, and that came across very well, Kevin. So perhaps in the next couple of years, some of these will settle down to new baselines as we understand the picture. Thank you, Councillor White. Any further questions? Very comprehensive. Sorry, Councillor.
Just raise one point. I was interested to hear about your these cameras that we could get live shots sent through to. I know when I was previously involved in Port Vale, we had a lot of problems with flight tipping. I know a lot of members have been.
Interesting you should say that because Paul Knight was actually suggesting, was asking a question about CCTV and copied me in because we have an asset of a CCTV unit for environmental crime for flight tipping. But he was talking about how we might work with the county group was looking at some what they call Eric cameras. They've got robot crawlers so they can actually mount themselves on lamppost stations. They're hugely expensive. So you actually put the unit at the bottom, it climbs at the lamppost, you don't need a bridge truck. But I said it was absolutely useless for the sort of things he was talking about because there aren't any lampposts in the area. And if they are, they're only about 2 or 3 metres tall. So
they climb trees.
You did a monkey unit. But I suggested that he might look into purchasing some more of these because they're downside cheaper and can be hidden in a tree and cover those areas.
So there's some technology there. Wait one moment. Councillor Paul, very quickly, then Councillor Wesley, we're going to wrap this up.
The Joint Action Group, JAG, there are a number of members within the town in particular that complain to me, why to me I don't know, probably because I've got a big dog, that they don't get any feedback with regards to the Joint Action Group. And when they go to a town council meeting, that we was at last night, you know, Lyton, Viscers Lane, etc., there is a report by the town council representative, and it's not wrong, it's right and just, but it's a pity that it doesn't come back to DDC members, what the Joint Action Group are doing or working, or some of it might be operational matters where we shouldn't be involved anyway, but it might be worth sometimes having a feedback.
Maybe some chat about. Thank you very much. Let's take Councillor Wesley.
Yeah, it's just a practical question really. The game trail cameras.
Yeah.
You said they're purchasable. I mean, are they easily purchasable?
Yes, it's a Northampton-based company who have
some information.
Yeah, I can share that with Wendy and get around the minutes. The other thing I wanted to say was the first quarter report. I produced a performance improvement bulletin, and that gets shared with all members. I don't usually produce one every year until the end of the first quarter, so that'll be coming out shortly. The prime data will be coming my way, starting from my inbox this week. What I would say to members is, one of the things that caused a little bit of choke earlier was Tony looking over my shoulder at this. That's every crime for every ward over the last 12 months. So I've got an analysis of the data at my fingertips there. I can tell members if they're worried about what the crime profile is like in their ward, or if they just like some enlightenment on that, then I can share that sort of information with them soon.
Thank you. Who would have thought it could look so pretty? Okay, so we have a final action. So thank you very much, Kevin. Our action is simply that the report be noted. Are we agreed on this? Indeed. Happy. Thank you very much. Thank you. If you wish, you were dismissed.
Well, my stomach starts to wake up.
Okay, good. Appreciate your patience. Tony.
Chairman, just before we move to the next agenda item, I just wonder whether people are comfortable with the bear that people are on. It's a bit cool. It is a bit cool.
I'm a bit cold.
Yeah. Shall I?
Yes, please, Tony. If you know how to work that thing. So while Tony fixes the air conditioner, and Kevin makes himself absent, then Joe, you can begin to prepare because you're next up on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you for turning the air conditioning out because I wasn't really comfortable.
Sorry, I should have checked. It's very poor chairing. Thank you very much. So let's turn to Councillor Guildford now. So at the last meeting, we agreed to invite Councillor Guildford along. For newer members, this is now a ritual. We invite portfolio holder in. It's kind of a quick scrutiny dip, if you like. And again, if there are any areas we want to look at in more detail, we can use this again as a springboard to drive an assignment, or we can simply have this opportunity in the public domain to ask any further questions. It also gives the portfolio holder an opportunity to address us and give us a look at the issues. So the brief was really current performance, current issues, future performance, plus the very thing that we should be interested in is what happens once this contract is up for renewal, and what can we do to really enhance and drive performance going forward. So on that, Councillor Guildford, for you, I don't know how you want to play this actually. I mean, we could do a semi-relaxed way. So if you present and we have any questions, just put your hand up and we'll dive in. Is that okay for you?
It might be better if you wait till the end.
Wait till the end.
Because, some of the slides at the
Rather
end
than
can explain what's going to happen in the future.
Very good. If that works for you, then fine. So let's do that. So Councillor Guildford will make the presentation and then come through me to ask questions when she takes a seat. Okay. Thank you.
So, just bear in mind as well that I'm new into the portfolio role, so I want to catch up.
Well, if we get stuck, we've always got the previous holder.
Yeah, okay. So, to start with, the background. So, the contract started back in June 2011. It's a 7-year contract that runs until June 2018. It's a partnership with NBC, as you all know, and the partnership unit is based in Northampton. But we have a business team here, and the contract falls under Simon. And there's Julie, who you all know as the contracts and performance manager.
I'm getting mixed up with my Simons here. This is...
Sorry, it is an error. It should read Simon.
It took me a while to figure that out. Yeah. Now I figured out, you confused me. This is Simon Bowers.
Bowers, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Apologies. And Julie, and then there's Kimberly and Yvonne, who form part of the team.
Simon Bowers is the important one.
I would hope we all know what falls within the contract, but for the purpose of any new members that might be here this evening, it's the waste management, the environmental cleansing and the open spaces. So there's some pretty pictures there that falls underneath them. The performance is what I'm here for, to talk about current and future. And so we thought it was best to explain how the performance is managed. There's an EMS internal service plan, not dissimilar from the corporate plan, that has 30 measures in it that is compiled internally and analysed on a monthly basis. There's the contract management framework. So you have the contract management team meeting, you have the two individual meetings, Simon with the contract manager for DDC, and who meets with them for James Hornet for NBC, so it's equivalent. They both meet with the contract manager. Then you have the streams that feed into it, which is the audit and review and performance assessment theme, the communications group, the contract centre partnership liaison group.
Councillor Guildford, it's unfortunate, is that not on your PowerPoint presentation? Are the measures on your, I'm not meant to ask questions yet, are the measures on your...
No, I didn't want to go right down into detail because I want to show you the framework, and that's what I thought the group was interested in, the framework of how it's managed and how it's going to go forward as opposed to the detail. I thought it was important to get away from the detail. So
you want to focus on the big picture?
The bigger picture is what we want to focus on.
Okay.
Because you would have had the corporate plan earlier on anyway for the detail. So, but I'm trying to get the concept that there is a proactive management framework in place to monitor and manage the contract. You've got all the environmental services documents that go with any contract, so you've got things like the operational plan, the contract manual, the recycling strategy. I can go and get on again down the list, going into the detail, but it's to give you the framework. It's not just a contract, it's all the strategies and service plans, etc. that go around it. And what I've spoken to about up till now has been the proactive monitoring, but of course, and you've spoken in depth about it this evening, the reactive monitoring, the complaints. The complaints should be seen as something to learn from, and the day-to-day correspondence that comes in. Then you've got further active monitoring, so at the start of the contract, more resources have been put into managing the contract, and we now have the team that go around and do some proactive inspections to try and pick up complaints before they become a complaint. That's the idea of that. From those inspections, from any issues from the complaints received, you then have a monthly table of issues presented to the contract manager, and then you have the audits and verification and performance. So that's an idea of how the contract is managed. If there becomes an issue, then you have the dispute resolution process, and this is where you can issue remedy notices, default notices, and critical performance notices. And now that you have the additional resources in place, that is becoming more proactive, so it is hoped that going forward we may see a difference there. You all know from the meetings, but for the benefits of the newer members, there's the payment and performance mechanism, where this is what financial penalties can be applied to the contractor for non-performance. And then there's the dispute process, which we are in at the moment, and there is a mediation process ongoing. And then there's the ongoing meetings with senior EMS staff. So there is a fair amount of resources that are now being put into managing the contract going forward. Again, I'm not going to go into the detail of these, but these are examples of remedy notices that have been issued. And that's an example. You'll have the notice number, you have the date it's issued, and then you have the reason for issuing it. And then they have to come back with a proposal. And this is the payment deductions, which centre around the KPIs, which is what's within the corporate plan. Again, it should be familiar for the more experienced councillors, but these are centred around the household waste, the residual waste, which lower is good, the missed bins and boxes, which we had such a debate about earlier, what's a service request, what's a complaint. There's the percentage of household waste, landfill, the number of complaints, the CO2 and the satisfaction survey. So that's The payment deductions, each year it's capped at 800,000, so the amount in total you can claw back, shall we say, from the contractor is 800,000. The total amounts for the 3 years are there. So you can see over the 3 years it's gone above the 800, but only 800 could be claimed back. And then the amount received by DBC is the bottom table from the clawback for the financial penalties. Again, it's normally a strong deterrent to a contractor if they're going to be a financial penalty to try and rectify, so as to avoid that. In conclusions, going forward, yes, in the corporate plan it was red. For the foreseeable future, it's looking red, but we hope to change some of that. Going forward, there are the new additional resources being put in place to help monitor and manage that. There's new, more critically, which I think is more important, is that there's new management in place, and Simon will have to refresh me with his name, the new...
one of them I can remember, the other one do you remember? John Cripps is the account director.
And
Dave Kenny, who is the new operations manager.
And more importantly, as opposed to previous EMS personnel, they've actually taken the time to come over to Daventry. They've taken the time to look at the issues. It sounds to me they have that listening tool, and let's see now if they're listening and going away and taking action. So the hope is going forward by the additional resources and the change in a relationship with the contractor, then performance may be improved, but there has to be a caveat here, because you're so far into the contract, there's not many years left to improve, and we're so far behind. It's like some of the targets that we talked about earlier. It may be almost impossible, but you can try. I think what must not be forgotten though, the positives. This contract delivered significant savings to the council at a time that it was needed, and that is forgotten sometimes, that there is a positive of the contract as well. It is also hoped with those additional resources that the dispute resolution process can be more proactive in the process of managing. And then for the future, we know there's things happening on a bigger scale outside of this contract. We need to explore other options. What's going to happen in 2 years' time? Nothing's been decided. Could it be a complete change of service? So not all the resources within the waste. There are other things happening outside of the contract that will affect the contract. I think that's...
Ready for questions?
Ready for questions. I'm conscious that you've got a long evening.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Guildford. Let's have questions. So hands up when you have them. Keep them focused on the question, please. So who wants to go first? Any takers? Councillor Scrutiny.
I was just interested, the SMT manager meeting notes came out a couple of days ago. I was just interested to see what was going forward about the consultants that we're intending to put in place to review the contract going forward. Obviously, when I was in post, we were getting to the point where we were about to start to look at that. So I'm just keen to know that's being pushed forward and what we're going to be doing and what options we're looking at.
Yes, I've only seen the notes that you've seen for the moment. So, I think you need to pick up
the question. So basically, what the question is, what's happening next? Was there a consultant?
There was a consultant, as far as the SMT management meeting notes that came out this week from the meeting about 3 weeks ago, are mentioning that we're thinking, putting in place a consultant to advise us on the best way forward.
Indeed, so. I mean, we've got now just under 3 years before this contract runs to its natural end. That's enough time to have a sensible, measured, planned approach to what follows it. So what we've done in the first instance with the agreement is we're in the process of commissioning consultants who will advise us, if you like, at a fairly high level on what types of approach are likely to make sense for us, giving us a menu of options which set out the type of service arrangements we might look at, what it should cost and what the consequences are, environmental consequences, economic consequences, so on. And they might be very different. I mean, we've had a very good staff session actually. We brought staff from across the authority together who might have an insight into this. We said, okay, completely turn the thing upside down. What if, and I'm not saying we'll do this, it probably all certainly won't, but what if actually we didn't do regular collections and actually either you told us when, you know, with your mobile phone you told us when you wanted to be empty? Would that make sense? Probably not actually, but it's the kind of approach of saying, let's take away the assumptions and see what we can do. Are there ways we could radically change the amount that people don't enter the municipal waste stream because there's a better thing to do with it? Again, probably not, if we're honest, but we ought to ask the question, and who knows what might come out of that sort of thing. So there's those kind of extreme options, you know, and then there's the more boring prosaic, do you put it all in one bin, commingle the recyclers, do you keep it in separate bins, or do you go something between those 2 points? What cycle of collections do you use? What type of collection container do you use? All of those questions. So we should end up with a menu of options, which we can also test through people's panel, the public, and say, how do you think this service would affect you? Would you like it? Would you not? We can look at the cost for the taxpayer. We can look at CO2, get that whole rounded picture, then make an informed choice about the direction of travel, and then if we need to, we can go to procurement.
I think the only other thing to add to that is, again, and this is what the sort of looking at, is we all know there's an issue with the recycling credits. So if they were to disappear, then the service would have to change.
Yes, I mean, I would say, just for the record and anything else, we're confident in our legal position with regard to recycling credits. The only method NCC can remove recycling credits is if they provide a facility to take the recycling they direct us to provide, and then they have to pay us the additional cost of so doing. So, okay, they wouldn't pay recycling credits, but effectively they pay something else, but I didn't know. So we're quite confident on our legal position, but for the purposes of that assessment, one of the things the consultants will be doing, Joe's quite right, it is giving us a basic test of, if we basically had 7 vehicles and the crews, and we just collected everything in one black bin and threw it in the nearest hole, what would that cost? Because that provides us with a benchmark against which we can then price what the county might try and force us to do, not the clearing there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paul?
Yes, thank you. Can I go back a couple of slides to the one headed 8, that one? Can we, put a little bit of meat on the bone? The amount of no cap.
What do you mean?
I'm confused.
Councillor Paul, is your question this? Because this is what I spotted. If basically the cap should be set at 800,000 and anything up, you'd be expecting 2012, 13, 14, all should be at 800,000 because the amount is higher, but the actual amount received is much lower than that. Exactly. Why is that?
Thank you, Chairman.
It's part of the contract itself. When a contractor enters into a contract, there's only a certain amount of financial risk they can take. So the payment was signed off on the basis that there would be a payment mechanism in place, but that was the cap put in that the contractor would agree.
But it doesn't because he says total amount if no cap. But how can that be the case? It can't be the total amount if no cap, surely.
There's an extremely complicated formula. We have a quite sophisticated spreadsheet which runs about 20 spreadsheet pages, which works out. Essentially, every part of the contract is broken down. There is a performance deduction related to many, although not all parts of the contract, which is a fraction of the value of that part of the contract. And depending on the degree and severity of failure and the duration, the level of penalty, they're not penalties, they're not allowed under English law, the level of performance deduction increases. But the cumulative total of all those bits of calculation is capped contractually to not exceed £800,000 in any one year. Hence, if we take the 12, 13 figures, the contractor would, if the cap had not applied, been subject to performance deductions of £821,334. Okay, the cap was applied as it had to be, so they actually will deduct £1,000. And of that 800, in the split arrangement we have with Northampton Borough, Daventry in that year received a little bit under half of that money. Essentially, between ourselves and Northampton is a combination of the amount of cost we have and the degree of service value we have in those areas.
So you're basically saying that Northampton gets balance?
Yeah, exactly.
Pro rata basis, I suppose.
Yeah, they do actually pay for about 75% of the contract in the first place, as opposed to 25%.
Okay, so in actual fact then, the amount we got back in 2014-15 is 224,939.
That's the different service areas that go into the calculation.
I think it was just because you said 800, but you only showed 300.
Yeah, that's our part.
Yeah, but it didn't say that there.
No, it's not very clear slide.
I did say that when I was...
No, but in terms of the information on the slide, if it was to be viewed by somebody who didn't have access to this conversation, it would look misleading.
You should say DDC share.
Instead of received.
Because on a very simplistic level, it looks like 800,000 is a cap, therefore anything above you don't get, and therefore it should just be 800 grand for all of them, rather than this weird formula that we've got. I mean, we understand what it is, so it's 224,939 2014 in our pot as DDC back.
How much did we pay out for the contract?
It's about £1.8 million a year.
So Councillor Paul, hopes that answers your question. Councillor Wesley, I saw you making some notes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know where to start on this. It just seems, I have to say from my perspective, I just think it's been a disaster. And I think all of this, you know, that slide to me shows the major problem. It really does show the major problem. You know, there's no incentive for them to actually do anything. The figures show that pretty much, don't they? It's just like, you know, we're fairly bad on this. We're going to get hammered for £800,000. So, you know, cut it all back to because we ain't going to get any better than that. So let's make it worse, and we'll earn ourselves more money. That's what it looks like to me, and it just looks like we've then had to actually pay more monitoring fees into that, and actually pay then consultants to actually look at where it all went wrong.
No, that's not correct.
Is that not correct?
The consultant is to look at the future.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because this
but we would have to do that anyway.
We'd have to.
Well, not if it was absolutely.
If it was working, you wouldn't.
If it was working, you wouldn't. That's the point.
The contract will come to an end in 3 years' time anyway.
I understand that, but if it was working really well, then it would just be, let's carry on and do it. You don't need consultants. So, you know, when we talk about
no, that's not. I think that's not true.
I think let's open the chat. I think
what I'm trying to make it. I'm just trying to say is, you know, this is. Let's hope these consultants do come up with something sensible, because it just seemed to me that the whole monitoring, the whole process of this was just wrong. So I just don't even know where to start on the questions.
Okay, so we understand that one. General kind of dissatisfaction. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, mine is, how do you stop this happening to another project? So we're in this, which I think most people would say is not a very good position to be in. How do we stop this happening to something else that might conform to this council?
I think we've got to learn from our, lessons learned. Log, I presume, we'll have one somewhere, and the actual contract was let, and then going through the process.
No, I don't mean this. I mean, if something else comes to the council, this is going to work its way through somehow. Mine is the next one that comes, which isn't this. What do we do to stop this happening to another contract?
I can correlate.
Far away.
I mean, I think I would perhaps immediately draw your comparison to a contract we were talking about earlier, the leisure services contract, which is actually highly successful. The contractor there is meeting all their performance targets in spades. They are paying us money to run our facilities as of this year. So it can be done. It's a question of having the right form of contract for the service. There are lessons to learn from what was done this time, without a doubt. And one of the things which Strategy Group approved a couple of years ago was a direction of travel which looks at probably disaggregating the contract, so you don't have grounds maintenance wrapped up with the waste, for example. Because one of the issues we do have at the moment is although I'll first of all briefly elaborate on this, it's difficult to extract part of the contract and leave other parts running, but it's such a big contract that causing it to collapse is not in the council's interest, because we have a whole range of services that need to be provided.
Yes, but
the one we said over the road, who administers that?
We do.
Daventry?
Yes.
Who administers that? 75% somebody said Northampton.
Yeah,
so this one you've picked there, which I'm 100% with you, you're doing it.
Indeed.
Daventry are managing that. Daventry are not managing that. 75% is with somebody else.
Councillor Parker, I think that if you think back to a previous meeting, we've had Councillor Long who's done a piece of work on this, the risks of joint working, and I think this probably recognise this is a big project for joint working, and the fact that the way it's set up has given us a lot of lessons. I kind of feel like some of this historical information, whilst it may be newer to some of you, we kind of feel like we've done a lot. What I'd really like to say is maybe take a final couple of questions on really looking at the next steps, the real last couple of years in this, how we can make it as successful as we can be. And really also the other thing is to send an alert to Simon saying when the consultant comes in and does the work, we'd request that he comes back to us at some point, or they come back to us and present to us some of their findings and some of their thinking at some point as is appropriate.
I would say, Chairman, we will have to come back whether we're going to consult back. I'm not sure because it's a fairly defined piece of work within
a piece of consultancy work comes back to us to have.
Certainly we want to involve members in the development of the sector going forward anyway.
So please note that, and let's take just a couple of final questions if we have, or comments. Future looking, most importantly, Councillor Paul.
Well, future looking, as you rightly said, Councillor Long produced a report about external contracts or contracts with external people. A new procurement strategy has come forward in recent months. Yes, you can learn by your mistakes. Going forward, a comment was made, well, what happens if the company that is doing the job is doing a bloody good job? Well, who's to say that a second company will do even a better job? So I think you've got to look at it, and you can't just sit back and say, well, you know, that company's doing wonderful, let's continue with them, because Company B could do even better. So I think, you know, you've got to be mindful of monitoring the ongoing situation, and in particular with waste. Lots of things change, you know, whether you have curbside collections, and we've gone all through this curbside collection, or whether, I mean, a new plant has opened up, I forget where it is now, out in the east of the country, which is taking out the aluminium and God knows what, and the rest is incinerated, so they're getting the best of both worlds. You know, they're not going to landfill, it's being incinerated. All the precious metals which couldn't be reclaimed before are now being reclaimed. So I think it's an ongoing situation with this, but I agree with you, you know, with any contract going forward, you know, you've really got to look at the nitty-gritty of.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. I think the point is there's a lot of technology development in this area around recovering. It's exceptional. A lot of work has been done in energy and waste and so on. So let me take a final comment here from Councillor Cribbin, the former portfolio one for this area, and then we'll move on to the next agenda. Thank you.
Just following off on what Councillor Paul was saying first off, is that, yeah, over the time of this contract, things have changed dramatically with regard to the way that waste management operates, the levels of money that you can get from their recyclers and things. Some have gone down significantly, some will stay the same, but the majority of the things that we were hoping for has meant that obviously the contract has been disadvantaged by that. That's shown quite obviously in performance levels in respect of what they're doing. I suppose we have to look at, we talk all about the leisure centre. Obviously we didn't get that right the first time, so we we may get it right the next time. We weren't to know at the time when we first let this contract that it wasn't going to work. We weren't going into it with a plan that it wasn't going to work. So I just hope that we get a good, robust contract next time. And we actually get a contractor that, I mean, you can have the best contract in the world, but if they don't perform, there's only so much you can do.
Yes, I think we have to look at the organisational reality. Companies do let you down. Absolutely. We're the best one in the world. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Crimmins. Thank you, Councillor Guildford. Appreciate your questions and sharing that. There's some interesting insights in there to us. So, unless you really want to stay for the rest of the meeting, you're free to go.
I haven't been home yet.
Julie, thank you, and Simon Bowers, Bovey. Simon B.
Simon, it says here, make sure I close now.
Thank you.
You're free to go if you want.
Yeah.
No force over here. Thank you very much. Good luck with the rest of the travelling. Thank you, Simon B.
Would you excuse me, Chairman?
Yes, come on. You don't go now, Councillor Paul.
Yes, I have
Let's talk about now you've
I
got.
have a business date.
Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
And your questions as always. You're free to go. So, now Councillor Paul's going to show us go through the rest of the agenda in 10 minutes. There we are. There we are. There we are. There we are. I'll give you one new Tony, even though I'm sure you've already seen one. Thank you. Monitor, you've got a copy from earlier, of course. So, let's begin the next agenda item, Intimate Group, the Rolling Work Programme. So, because we did 8 earlier, the section here, mainly for Councillor Wesley, is we review any work in progress. So, at each meeting, the idea is we set some new projects off. They begin with a scoping document which gets returned back. And then we have a little period to go and do the work, and that is all laid out on the document that I've handed out here. This is our workflow document, and basically very straightforward in a nutshell. So we agree to take on a piece of work, we agree to have a chair for that assignment. They're also called work task panels, but I like to call them assignments. And then the assignment chair goes and gathers some members that are applicable to join the team, not portfolio holders. And then you agree to come back to the scoping document the first time, after which comes back at the next meeting. We agree to the scoping document. As you could see earlier from the discussion about SLM, it's very important to make sure they're always scoped very clearly, because we'll be talking about a couple of years' time. And then the real work begins and the project begins. And this also is for you, Councillor Crimmins, because we've implemented this procedure and way of working since I've been the chair. So then it basically follows all the way through. Once it finishes here, we make recommendations on it, which then goes off to basically strategy group with some inputs from the senior management team. And senior management team, then what they do is on that strategy meeting, there is a document which clearly articulates the original recommendations from us to the recommendations to strategy group, plus any modifications and the rationale for that. Because obviously there's nothing to stop us coming up with really crazy ideas that just don't withstand that kind of operational implementation. So then we get the opportunity again to see the strategy group. Obviously we'll be voting on that, none of us members in here, but we can go and speak on the subject, and we've had some quite lively debates actually in the past, and therefore what happens, there's a stage here which basically is when the recommendations go to strategy, they come to me for a quick review, not to make any comments on, to make comments on, but not to be able to say yes or no, and then it goes to the strategy group, and then from strategy group, obviously, as you know, it goes to full council, and then from full council we then get an implementation update, which comes to us courtesy of Tony at every meeting. And then 1 year after the implementation, we do a review, and therefore 1 year after the implementation plus some time to do the review itself, we have like we did with SLM this evening. And that really should complete the absolute cycle. So it can take maybe even a year and a half. But the main work obviously should go through as quickly as possible, and it all depends how quick you turn things around. Any questions on that? Straightforward? Hopefully the document in front of you says it all. The item in red at the bottom, that's because we've had it on recently, and that will be that. Now you've had a chance to see. If you're happy with that, we'll make that black, and when it's going to put a title on it, so in case you ever lose a document, we know it has. So that's how it works. What I'd like to do first actually is we'll bring in previous panels, and then we'll have a look at what we call the rolling work programme. Again, that's mainly new for Wesley and Cribby. So, the first item on here is that Councillor Frenchman has adopted a economic project from Councillor Perry, and because only people who are on this committee can share an assignment. So what happens when we had the last changeover, we had an assignment. So you saw tonight Councillor Patchett's got handed over to Councillor Randall to present, and Councillor Long's also went to Councillor Randall. The only one we didn't give to Councillor Randall was Councillor Perry's, and Councillor Frenchman's got that. I say that because that's where Councillor Perry used to usually sit. But Councillor Frenchman, so your first task tonight is to give us a verbal update on the rural economic project. And we know for you it's closely entwined with the one that you're working on with the transport. And this is your opportunity to first of all reintegrate into the group by giving us a verbal, and then in due course we'll expect the full report from you. So a quick update please.
Thank you, Chair. I've had to rejig the task members because Richard Attenborough is no longer a councillor. So I thanked him for his work, and I've
sent him on his way.
Well, basically, yes. I've just forgotten who he was. Wayne Howard, because of his I thought his expertise or his portfolio would be useful to be as part of the group.
Just let me check that. Tony, that's okay, is it?
It's okay for him to be involved, but as long as he doesn't chair the...
As long as he doesn't chair it, that's it. So we can get his input into it.
Yeah.
Kind of only in that capacity.
Yeah. I have discovered a slight discrepancy, and I'm not sure how that works, because obviously I've got the scoping document, which is obviously makes sense, but then I read the minutes of the last meeting, page 6, and it says the focus of the task panel will be on diversification, food and drink and tourism. Well, that's not in the scoping document.
Yes,
so
I think there are particular strands within the overall strategy.
So what I was going to say was that they do form an integral and important part of what Kevin's still on the task panel, and he's briefed me on I've made some notes on that, and that obviously does form part of it, but I don't see it as necessarily the main part of it.
That's fine.
But I was really looking at some joint up thinking between a lot of these events. So with Kevin's help, we put together some questions which I've actually circulated to 4 key people at the moment. I was going to ask Simon, but Simon Bowden, but he's gone now. It was a joke. It was a joke. Backfired slightly there. Simon's been sent it, and I sent it to David James as the portfolio holder, and to I've forgotten 4 people. I'll tell Whitney who I've sent it to, and I've actually had 1 response so far, so I'm waiting for some other responses. Once I've got those responses, I'm going to convene a little meeting of the task panel so we can decide how to take that forward and where we go from there.
It's quite a big job, I think, this one, isn't it, really?
Well, that's why I think that actually looking at the minutes, that it probably divides into several key areas, and the rural transport has 2 aspects to it. One is the general, how can it contribute to rural financial stability and the word off the top of my head. But the other one is more the social isolation. So of the rural transport, half of it fits into here and half of it doesn't.
Yes, and you'll remember actually one of the things we're waiting for on the rural transport is for you to get this one, and that was you've got a ball back.
So I've got to see how it will fit in and what will work. But I mean, some of the ideas that we were thinking about were that, for instance, in the rural transport, things like tourist attractions should be themed up on, say, Sundays with a bus service that also goes to pubs and other places, so people could have a day out on a bus. It could be a vintage bus, but just things like that. So we'll be looking at that, and I don't really want to say much more until I've got back some of this data from the questionnaire, which is, as I said, has been sent out, and I gave them to the end of this week to respond.
Okay, thank you, Councillor French. What do you think is the realistic timing, bearing in mind the complexity of the project you're working on? Is it the case you want to maybe bring a written document back to us at the next meeting, an interim document?
The next meeting?
September.
I think that by then I would be disappointed if I couldn't have some sort of written report. Whether it is the written report is a slightly different matter, because of course we're starting to span the holiday period, and July and August as I'm away and I guess other people are away. That just might make it difficult, but that's what my aim is, to have an outline report by the next meeting. How detailed that report is, I don't quite know at this stage.
It might need a bit of working on it.
I think it will do, but it might give you as chair a chance to direct anything that you think is off target or on target or whatever, so we don't waste resource and time.
Absolutely, we can always bring it back to the group as a sort of interim then.
A work in progress.
A work in progress, but actually something written.
Yes.
And then we can work it up and have a good discussion about it, because you saw from that customer complaints one tonight, which has come back a couple of times, that there was still some missing detail in it.
Yeah.
With the best will in the world, sometimes they don't understand scrutiny. So okay, we'll put you down for the September meeting for a draft outline, written draft outline.
Yeah. Good word.
And I think sometimes it needs to be written because, well,
it focuses your attention.
It focuses your attention, absolutely, yeah. So a written draft outline by September meeting. Good. Thank you for that. Nice to have you back working on that. And
does this document need? Because it's an official document. I mean, there are, like Chris Over's not on it. He's on here, but obviously he's not the portfolio holder now. And Richard Attenborough's off, and Wayne Howard's on. So I don't know whether this needs.
I think we can work with him for the time being.
It doesn't bother me, but I just for accuracy. But
yes, it was correct at the time I produced it anyway.
Yes.
And I think it's still the main scope itself, the main emphasis on the project is that. It's really mainly for our purpose. Actually, to keep us on track.
That's fine.
As we know, ultimately what really matters is the recommendations coming out of the sound. Good, thank you for that one. So, good to have you back. The next one is on the rolling work programme. We've got various panels in various states. Actually, because of where we are now, if you look here, we've got if you look at this document here, by the way, particularly new members, this document is again small, I appreciate that, but it basically guides you through the projects we're working on through the various stages. And the ones at the bottom is kind of like various things we write down as aid memoirs to think about doing work on, potentially. But our objective is to get everything all the way across green, and it does take some time. Now, on a sort of yearly basis, we do type this up. And what I'm proposing to do today is suggest that you can see on there we've got item 9, abandoned. But it does say 9, doesn't it?
It does
say 9, yeah. The reason why it's not necessarily number 8 is because we might have finished number 8 already, it's moved off. This is their actual unique reference number. So what I'm proposing to do, we abandoned number 9 last year. The project just quite frankly fell apart, so I'm recommending that we remove that from the rolling work programme. It's no longer required. And I think at this stage that's probably the only one we can remove, just to add to the clarity of the document. I think we should also remove review Amy performance in pink. And I think that's because, again, we've had the opportunity to discuss that tonight and we understand where that goes next. I also think, quite frankly, we've spent so much time on that topic. I think we know where we are. I don't think there's any new information we can bring to light tonight. There was some illumination tonight, but I think that's probably it. So I'm going to remove those two if everybody's agreed on that.
Charlie Chairman, did you want to come back and talk obviously about the consultant side of things? That's another work stream.
Yes. What I'd like to do is at a later point is invite them in to show us the results of the consultancy project. From what was being said there, it's very early stages, having not even got to the point of commissioning the consultant or tendering for a consultant either way. But I think we'll follow that one closely anyway, and we can also do that through the process of the rolling work, the figures.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do before we move on to really taking in updates, I would like to have any comments or any documents, any assignments we'd like to launch. So particularly, Councillor Frenchman, you've got a project. I'm sure you don't want another one.
At the moment, no, thank you.
That's quite a beast to get on with. Councillor Gribbin and Councillor Wesley, is there a project that you have in mind you would like to add to the rolling work programme and then start working on it? From information you've seen over from the information we have, or just insights that you know about the council, or areas of performance you think we need to look at, or even things that have been requested to you by other members to have a look at. Any particular topics?
Well, I have to say, it was, I've sort of been thinking about it. It's always quite difficult, as I said to you earlier, Colin, it's what being you, it's what you don't know, you don't know.
That's what I was to say. You still you don't necessarily know. I think
it's quite difficult, but we did have a little, there was a topic that came up at the Daventry meeting the other day, and it is where we are on the developments, on the current Roads Canal, water space, boat lift, and all around that. And I have to say, it seems to me it's a little bit like listening to how things happen and where things go. Sometimes it just looks like there's a bit of received wisdom. We all know this is right, and we all know where we've got it. Now, every time that I've spoken to people about this and various things, it doesn't seem that anyone really knows where it came from, and anyone doesn't really know why it's a great idea.
Sorry, Councillor Wesley.
The canal in particular, it's it's almost a hearsay thing, but that's how it sounds to me. It worries me a bit that it's sort of evolved out of itself, and I'm not judging it here. I'm not saying it's intrinsically a bad idea, but I think there's a lot of questions about cost, how it will be financed, the promises made to the people of the town and the district about what it's going to do. The fact that it's been promised, I think, is an issue when I'm not clear how the money is going to become available, how it's going to be sustainable, how it's going to run, and at the end of the day, what that will do for everybody in this town and in the surrounding area. And it gets put forward as an absolutely integral part of the plan of the area, of the whole development going out that side of the town, which actually does link up. It almost links up. It starts to link up villages as well. It's Norton, it's Longbury, it's Welton, it's everywhere else, and I think it is really, really important. And,
so, Councillor, if you want to frame this a question, what would your question be? So these usually begin with a question.
My question would be how did we arrive at this? How did this come about, and the rationale and the data behind it?
Is the question, is that the right question?
I don't
because
know.
Actually, if you were to say, because you can say, if you found out what the rationale was, does it move you any further forward?
No, you're probably right. Maybe when I'm saying the rationale, what I'm trying to sort of say is, I'm assuming by the rationale that it came from that it was going to be a great thing, and all the numbers and to actually back really that's what back up the idea. That's really what I'm trying to say.
Is the question then maybe is it still the right strategy?
Yeah, and also that's a bit of a problem there, isn't it? Because for me, time has moved on such a long time. It's such a long time ago as well, and life does move on. People's attitudes, wants, and desires do actually move on as well. So, and I know you can't second guess absolutely everything all the time, but something that was running 5 or 6 years ago maybe already be running out of steam. I think we should be sure that it's not run out of steam before anything is actually done.
Would this be something to do with reviewing the master plan? Town centre master plan.
I don't think it's reviewing the whole. I'm not sure that it's reviewing the whole town centre master plan. I think it's certainly reviewing that part of it, because it is. This is part of the question, really. Is you're absolutely right. How does it hang together? Does it hang together on that, or is there something else, or is it a dead duck? Really?
It sounds like a very interesting project.
And I think,
any comments on that?
Because there's two elements of it, it's where everyone links. When you listen to the stories, it's linked. There's a water space and there's a canal, and the water space becomes the canal, and the canal becomes the water space. And
I think there's quite a lot of interest in it, because the ideas floated, if I can put it that way, are quite innovative, quite interesting, could be very beneficial, or could be crippling.
That's really one.
And I'm not a new member. I've been here 5 years, but when I started, these things were being talked about, and I had no idea where they'd come from. Had there been a poll of residents? Has there been a consultation, or is it just a whim of somebody that's caught the public or the council's imagination and become embedded in its psyche, sort of thing?
Almost like a group think later on.
Yeah.
We all believe this to be the case. Councillor Curran, any comments?
Well, on that, yeah, I mean, from what you're saying, it has been around. I've been around for longer than you have.
Yeah.
I've noticed, obviously, it was almost like a pet project of the portfolio holder at the time.
Okay.
But obviously, it has been taken on board by the rest of the community, and it's been mooted all over the place. We've also, I don't think from a point of view of what we're going to spend on it initially, I think probably we're going to be not having to pay an awful lot of money out of our own pocket for it. But I do take your point about where it's going to be, when we're going to have to pay ongoing costs and things like that. So it's an opportunity for us to have a look at that and see whether actually it would work.
If it's still viable.
If it's still
feasibility.
There you go, Mark. Councillor, sorry. It sounds like you've got a project there.
Feasibility, but
and I think you can cut it and slice it whichever way you like. But let's be clear on the title. Is it focused on, is the canal arm still the right strategy for Daventry, or is it more than the canal arm? What's the limitations of your scope?
I think the problem is actually extending it beyond canal. Beyond canal is that actually becomes.
Would you call it beyond canal?
So if you take it further downstream, we can't.
Water space in Daventry town. Then you've got the canal that leads up to the region.
My issue with the project that encompasses water space makes it huge. That's just integral to everything there. Now, I don't know if that's possibly the right thing to do, but it is absolutely massive. In my opinion, it's just absolutely, it is integral. Now, that may be absolutely vital that is done. I'm not sure.
I think you'll probably find, if you talk to members of the strategy group, that if we don't deliver a water space, then a lot of what we're doing in the centre of Daventry, master plan, would fall apart. I take your point about boat lift, whether the boat lift separately is something else we could look at.
Well, and the whole infrastructure of a mile and a half of a big trench and whatever it does.
But I think we had a very interesting presentation on the canal, didn't we, about the hydraulics of it and blah blah blah. And I think this raised a few questions in the.
Well, there's various questions about You know, I mean, there's already questions about the initial work means it doesn't actually work quite properly. So there's more work to be done on how it would actually work. More consultants, more input as far as which is another cost. You know, obviously money's already been spent on some sort of preliminary models and designs about this, but obviously that's going to have an effect as well. And it's everything's around. I think the water space is just too far gone and too integral to what we're.
So you're looking at maybe more the canal arm and the infrastructure on that.
The more the canal and the infrastructure. I think to do anything else is just trying to. As you said, put a torpedo in something.
I think it would seriously upset.
Well, it would just be too massive, and you know, and I think, and also there's a certain amount of public feeling on this as well, and I think if we did a proper study on this, it would actually. If it came out on the right side, what it is something to say to people, well, this is actually how it really, really works. Because I have to say, at the moment, most people don't believe that it does. So if you can prove it does, if we can prove it does work, it's a very, very good thing. And if we show that it doesn't work, then it's a very, very good thing.
I think our position on this is very independent and objective. We simply look at what information has been gathered, what the thinking around the subject is, and what really is still driving this, and is it grounded in some kind of reality. Okay, Councillor West, so great. So can you take that on? And the way it works is like I explained on this, you get some time to think about it formally. Yeah, so you don't have to. It feels like this bit's a bit slow to start with, because you don't have to bring the scoping document back to us until the next meeting. But I think that'll be good for you because it'll give you some time to really think about who you're going to have to involve. Talk to some other members about it. But basically, at this point, we formally add it to the programme with your name on it, which means at the next meeting we'll expect the scoping document back.
Okay.
At that meeting, we have a quick discussion about it. It's usually quite a quick process, and then you begin the project. And that is it. I mean, the good thing about this committee is we don't have to go and ask anybody who want to do it. Basically, we decide to do it, and then we go and do it. And probably sends a few ripples out there, literally, particularly on this project. But that's okay. We're independent, objective, and that's the whole point. We're apolitical. Well, I think we're simply looking at the facts.
You know, you don't make ripples for ripples' sake, but sometimes, you know, it's. I believe that's the sort of thing that we're here for, to be perfectly honest.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, so we can add that to the rolling work programme, which I'll do, and that is minuted as you be taking that project on. In terms of the rolling work programme, you've got the template as well for that, Wendy. So Wendy can send you the template, scoping document, and sorry, the rolling work programme, the template for the scoping document. Really, what I need you to think about is the information sources, the methodology you'll employ, and also think about who you're going to have on your team. That's mine. Thank you, Councillor Frederick. We got a bit of feedback last year that our groups were too narrow. So particularly take good cross-section of members with you. And it doesn't matter where they're from. So, you know, you've got UKIP people as well, that could also join. So people like Councillor Connors might have some interesting feedback as well. So please cast your net wide.
And also you've got the rural people as well. It's not just
absolutely.
Exactly, have a different perspective of it.
I do think that's absolutely.
Because you could end up with just 4 or 5 people at town council.
But you don't want to just. I don't want to hear the same arguments for which I've already heard 15 times. 1,500 times.
It's demonised type of thing.
No, absolutely. I don't want it to be a parochial thing. And please, you know, this is not a witch hunt for my part either. It's a genuine one to make sure that we're doing the right thing. It really, really is. Unfortunately, I'm on record as sort of being a little bit critical of it in the past, but my criticism has mainly been based on the fact that I've never been sure what it was about.
Well, that's a very good starting place, actually. It's sort of healthy scepticism, so which is what you need in this particular panel. So that's good. Tony, please.
Yeah, I was just going to offer a couple of words. In sense of, you mentioned the scoping document and about being clear about your information sources. I think in fairness to Councillor Wesley, who's relatively new here, the actual source of the information may not be clear. So I think the information types that you would like to get, and we can help signpost you to relevant.
So Tony, as you're the manager that looks after us, can Mark come to you when he's signposting internally if he needs that?
Yeah, sure. That's not a problem. What I would suggest is if you get a copy of the scoping document and just have a first go at that and see where that takes you, and certainly we can offer support with it.
Good, yeah, and be healthy, sceptical, but obviously objective and independent. That's our role. Good, thank you for that, Councillor Wesley. Councillor Cribb, do you have anything you would like to look at yourself?
Right, well, I mean, obviously, coming from the environment portfolio recently, I would like to try and look at something within that sort of area. And the question is, obviously, you've knocked on the head the aim of performance. I don't think we need to take that forward anymore. Something I'm quite keen on looking at how we're going to let the new contracts and things like that. Now, you have mentioned about bringing the consultants' report back and stuff like that. So I don't know whether you're wanting something more immediate or whether you want me to. I'd like to perhaps have a review of that and take something out of that going forward. But that doesn't actually help you for the next meeting.
No, we'd like to get a bit of momentum going. So otherwise we get a bit we need to demonstrate we're doing something. So
they don't have to be massive projects. It could be a very simple small project.
Turn it around
I'm just looking on this one. What was the position with regard to the management of closed churchyards at the moment?
Yeah, well, that was an interesting one. Councillor Perry, I think, raised that one. He said this would be an interesting one to have on. So,
because that doesn't seem to have gone very far so far. I mean,
well, no, it wouldn't have done these. What we've done
is a lot of problems.
Yeah. I've had a fair amount of input with that, with the environment portfolio. I think it falls within that. Yeah. So potentially I could perhaps take that forward.
Well, that'd be helpful if you could, because we basically what we also do is if there's anything during a meeting we feel like we should capture, we capture and put it on there until there's a space available to take on the work. Yeah. So we didn't really clearly define the problem entirely.
So it came to SNI in April.
It was only in the last meeting, in actual fact. So I haven't put down who raised it, but I think it was Councillor Perry, but we agreed between us that we would explore it. Yeah. In fact, I did put that Perry recommended in brackets. What I'd like to do again, best thing is take a scoping document, define the problem, and bring it back for the next meeting. And it might be one you can turn around by the subsequent meeting.
It may well be.
Yeah.
It's obviously not being particularly fluent in the SNI process. I'd probably need a bit of help as well.
Yeah, sure.
When you have the document support, you're very simple. Yeah. Scoping document will come back first, we get it signed off, and then you're free to work on it. And then realistically, you only want 1 or 2 meetings to come back again. Yeah. So generally, we at least say worst case is you have a verbal first time, and then you come back with a real thing afterwards. Depends on the size of the project.
Yeah, I mean, this potentially, depending on what you want to go for, I mean, it could be a particularly quick one. But
you don't really know until you've had a look at the fully scoped it out. Tony?
I think, I'm not wishing to pull away from offering any support at all, and please don't take this the wrong way. But in terms of scoping your projects, it's not appropriate for me to try and frame those projects. They need to come from you as members. So I think if dare I suggest, Chairman, that if the members want some support in framing the project, then perhaps they look in your direction.
Absolutely, they can. I'm the Chairman. Absolutely, yeah.
But in terms of who are the right people, the information sources, I'm quite happily.
Absolutely right.
Can I just make one point to you on that? That there is more than one sort of closed churchyard. Because there's the ones that we maintain, there's the ones that the parish councils, but it's also the church dumping them. That's a problem because you're not allowed to say no, but they have to ask you, and you can say no, but that's illegal. So there's a whole conundrum in there.
Was a fair amount of background to look at to see.
I've been through it, so if you need any,
that'd be good. Thank you. And interesting enough,
many churchyards? Well, 4 or 5. The BBC had 4 or 5 placed on them. Yeah, but they then recharge the parish by Norton. There's 3 or 4, isn't there?
There's one at where is it?
Byfield, I think.
Byfield is council patches, so about that one.
Councillor Crimmon, can I recommend you capture all that in the scoping document?
Yep.
Clearly define what the issue is. Probably go back and speak to Councillor Perry as well, see what's driving his thinking. And by the 30th of, by the September meeting, please bring back the scoping document. It obviously goes in a couple of weeks beforehand, so as you work back from that point, as you would expect. And you can run it past me if you like, obviously, to kind of shape it up. But really, just get everything down in the scoping document. Wendy's got the template, and we'll resolve it in September, then you begin the work. And obviously, only when you've written it do you realise exactly how much work is required. And can you please, it's always best to frame it as a question. That's why I like this. So Mark's question is basically, is the canal arm still the right strategy for DDC? That's the Daventry. That's the kind of the question we'll go with that. So you phrase your question, we finish up with an answer, and the answer will have some recommendations. The conclusion is the answer, then recommendations. That's obviously down the line, but we'll guide you through the process.
Yeah, I'll get an idea from Councillor Perry what his question. There's no question in this one.
No, there wasn't that point. It was quite late in the meeting as well. You saw a good lesson, I think, tonight was the corporate complaints. A lot of this, if in some meetings you could bash this out before you arrived, but I like to have some discussion in the meeting, so we're actually being quite transparent about the process. And because no document comes in perfect, and our job is to have almost like do a pre-scrutiny on it and send it on its way. And I want to make sure that things don't just come here, we have a discussion and then go again. So you have a proper discussion about the topic. But you can make it more effective by making sure that the body meets the conclusions as reflected in the recommendations. The corporate complaints document we had tonight didn't quite do that, in my opinion. Okay, so that's that one. So you're set up. Let's move on to the next item, which is, just for the sake of clarity, that's C we've just done. 1 year post-implementation review. I've got here the chairman to review. Now this is where basically, again, looking at your rolling work programme, anything that's been fully implemented 1 year on we have a look at. But you can see on the recommendations implemented status, which is the penultimate column, nothing is yet green for us to review on here. So we have to go for it to be green before we do a review of it. This is where I have to, you'll see in a minute, we look to Tony because Tony will tell us if anything's been fully implemented from our recommendations, and then the clock starts ticking. So we haven't got anything to do this evening.
No, I won't be reporting anything's fully implemented this evening, Chairman, but I will take you through these plans in a moment.
Okay, we'll come to that next. Thank you, Tony. So what? But the point is, we wanted to build a line of sight so we could actually see the value that we're having, so we can actually see where they end up and then review them 1 year later. And actually it's very interesting because what you find with the SLM on, the way you write the recommendation, the way it goes through council, makes it easier or harder to actually identify how performance is doing 1 year on. So I think there's a real lesson for us there going forward as well, to make it crystal clear, like a smart objective basically. So, with that, it's, I think it must be your turn, Tony, because you're going to talk to us about hand car washes, which was a particular area we thought was of concern.
Which one's the best?
A pre-scrutiny, sorry.
Which one's the best?
Yeah, there is a paper in
your pack.
I'm conscious we've been jumping backwards and forwards, but it's page 75 if you haven't shuffled them like I have. But
Tony, before you speak, sorry to interrupt. So what's the time you have to ask for more time? Is it 9:15?
9:15. After the meeting's been running 3 hours.
Yeah, that's right, 3 hours, isn't it? Yeah. So we might even do it. Okay.
Okay. So if I may, I'll just briefly take you through this paper. It's only a brief note anyway. The introduction, just really the background. The question was asked at the last meeting. Concerns, unspecified, I think, were raised around hand car wash operations and the increase of them within the district. So what I took away as a task was having a look at some of the issues around them, just to come back and inform the committee. So paper set out looking at firstly at planning issues, and really what I'm saying there is it's unlikely that there are any planning issues. The one that we've had a close look at is the London Road one. and from an enforcement point of view initially, from a planning point of view, and it is unlikely that there are planning issues with these.
Because I was thinking Willoughby's not actually Willoughby's in Rugby, isn't it?
It's
just over.
It's in Warwickshire, sir.
It is in Warwickshire, isn't it? It's just you cross over the border onto it, because that's what I always think about when the alarm bells go for me, because of all the runoff into the water, essentially. You might also have some insight into this, Councillor.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked around. I'm just probably refer back to Northampton, where Morton's on the edge of Northampton. There's quite a few in quite close vicinity to where I live. I don't think there's a particular planning issue, but I know on one occasion they were putting up sort of temporary street, temporary
signs,
not signs, no, canopies and things like that, and that requires planning commitment.
So do signs, don't they?
Well, the signs do as well to a certain degree, don't they? I suppose it's advertising consent for.
In terms of our experience here, and this information's come from the planning officers, in that they looked at the London Road operations, the ones we've looked at most closely, and there were issues there around signage, but generally with a bit of cooperation from the operator they can be put into a state that doesn't cause us any enforcement concerns.
So Tony, on that aspect of planning, so they have a particular classification, but that doesn't need to change for the purpose they're used for? Planning is site specific, so it depends what was going on there before and what the change of use is. I mean, what the general view is that the operation would either not constitute a material change of use on because typically they're appearing on in industrial sites, so it wouldn't be a material change of use. Therefore, there's not a concern for us in that regard. Okay, Councillor Wilson.
That answers my question.
Oh, does it? Yeah. Now, the purpose of this quick review, if you like, is a bit of pre-scrutiny, because it's sometimes you can come to here and think there might be an issue, but you don't know. And so we requested Tony go and have a look at it in a bit more detail. And if there had been anything here to set alarm bells ringing, we could have done some more work on that.
Can I just quickly take you through the rest of the paper? Licensing, we're not all aware of any licensing requirements, so no issues there for us. Health and safety, as the note says, the county, your colleagues, professional colleagues who work with their counterparts across the county, and there are various technical groups for different disciplines. And in terms of health and safety, the issue came to the attention of the county group some years ago. They had a look at it, and essentially there weren't any real concerns there. Environmental, the waste management and water runoff is really an issue for the Environment Agency rather than ourselves.
So Tony, can I stop you on that? So that would mean it would be the Environment Agency that did the enforcement or inspection on those, and we wouldn't have to get involved in that at all.
We wouldn't normally. We could ask them to. I mean, they would tend to be aware of operations, certainly ones that are causing any concern. Their officers are out and about as well, so they'll see those. Nuisance. Well, one nuisance complaint we've received in total in recent years, and I believe that was to do. Well, so to actually say it was a noise nuisance. I think it was linked with some spray as well.
There was one up here in town, actually, if I remember, where. Yeah, that's right, up on the Oxford Street, isn't it?
I believe that's where this complaint came from.
Yes, because that person around the back of there is also where our chief executive lives, isn't it? This is basically chief executive's neighbour that was complaining. Yeah, so that makes well.
Okay. Fly posting was the point, well, to a degree, a point about signage, and that was dealt with at low level and moved on. And business rates, they are rateable for business rates, but because of small business exemptions, then in effect we don't collect any business rates. So they are compliant with the requirements, albeit there is no there is no requirement for them to pay
Because they're exempt and therefore...
They're exempt to small businesses, not as hand car washing. So it's to do with the turnover of the business, or the rentable value, I think, actually, of the business. So typically they're a small site or a small part of the site, and therefore they fall beneath the threshold for business rates.
So Tony, based on this preliminary assessment, perhaps there is no further work required at this point?
That's for you.
That's for us to decide. There's nothing said along us. Any comments from members?
No, nothing seems to jump out.
Nothing jumps out. I think for me it's useful that it's been done, because I think it's sort of an underlying, how does that work?
It's also the sort of thing that a constituent will come up to you and say, what about that car wash, aren't they? Whatever.
The complaint that I've had doesn't really pertain to it, but the complaint is the London roadway, and it's because the operatives ride their bikes up and down the path without due regard to, which is the nature of the car.
As ward member, I also had, as well as you, Mark, Councillor, I also had complaints about that one.
Yeah,
particularly when I camped.
That's a product of somebody riding a bike on the path.
Not necessarily the car wash itself.
I mean, if there are issues such as that, then it's essentially antisocial behaviour.
Yeah, absolutely. That's no different right from the fact that there's car washes.
And people have some sort of muttered about the water runoff, but you've sort of covered that with the environmental, and that's not our issue.
I think what I was really keen to know is if it is our responsibility, then perhaps we need to do some inspection there, but if it definitely isn't, and perhaps another agency is picking that up.
I can't see it being an awful lot different than you or I cleaning our car on our driveway, to be honest.
What's the scale of this?
Scale of, yeah, but it's going into the main sewer, isn't it?
Yeah, particularly with a lot of oil running off and so on, but that was my concern from an environmental perspective. I also had some concern about the workers and the treatment and the contracts and whether they had the right to work and so on and so forth. But again, that wouldn't have picked this up, Tony.
No, I mean, it's not something that we have information on. Potentially immigration issues, potentially HMRC issues.
Might be for agencies.
Yeah, not for us. It's not something we would get involved in.
Okay, thank you. Well, perhaps this is any further comments. Perhaps our duty here is to simply note the briefing note, and no further action is required at this stage from this committee.
Yeah.
Happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I think on my list, the rolling work programme, we had car washes. I'll put here to return. I'll put a simple note on there, actually, no more, just to say returned briefing note. 30th of June, no further action. But thank you, Tony, for preparing. That's helpful. Sometimes you don't need a whole huge project if you can do a quick piece of work for you. We've had a look at it. We've done our duty. So we've now got implementation activity. We've got 5 minutes to go. You don't need to rush, Tony, but the time is on your side if you want it.
Okay, if I crack on that. Just the benefit of members new to the committee, for each task panel, as identified on the rolling work programme, what we do is produce an action plan which tracks the recommendations once they have become council recommendations. So from S&I, report to strategy group onto council. So whatever the finished product is coming out of council, this is what we track on these. So there's one of these for each of the task panels. It did occur to me, actually, looking at the rolling work programme, I ought to put the assignment numbers on these.
I think that would be really helpful, Tony, because they are unique reference numbers.
Yes, so I'll endeavour to do that for next time. So these won't necessarily come in the order that they appear on the programme.
Just for our sake on this one, as we go down, so we're on DDC, contract with local authorities.
I knew you were going to ask.
It's number 11.
Number 11.
Yeah.
So what we've got here is that this one had 2 recommendations approved by council. Recommendation 1 has been split into 2 actions. Just because it's different pieces of work happening at different times.
Easy highway.
The first part has been completed, was captured with the procurement strategy, which was adopted at May 2015 council. The second part has been picked up by the procurement toolkit, which is due to be completed in August. And the second recommendation is completed. So one recommendation completed, 1
1.5, really.
Can I call that 1.5, Tony?
Be generous, yeah.
Well, I mean,
certainly, sure.
it is my committee, I appreciate that, but just in the sake of spirit of fairness, 2's too many, 1's too few, and 1.5 for us. 1.5. Because you have to put something on my document. So that basically what we do, the column, if you follow along for new members, number 11, you can see the recommendations were adopted by council. Up until that point, that might say strategy, depending on where it is in the cycle. Then it goes to full council, so we know exactly our success rate, if you like, quantitatively anyway. And then the red, where it says implemented status, on this one I'll put 1.5 at and today's date. That means until it goes green, we're going to expect more October. So it's simple as that. Now you know, very simple system works. It doesn't get any more complicated. So that's that one. Okay. And the next one, Tony?
Moving swiftly on, the next one, corporate strategic plan performance reporting, which is item 12 on the assignment 12.
Thank you.
Well, you've seen the product of that being presented to you earlier on the agenda. So essentially that is complete, apart from one of the recommendations. There were 8 recommendations that came through council. All been completed, apart from recommendation 4, which is the quarterly plan will be circulated to all members, and this is in the new year of the plan, so that will happen
after the end of the first quarter. Great, so well done. So we've got 7 implemented out of 8. Surely we'll have evidence that the 8th has been implemented when you come back to it. This is working well. Good.
Rural transport task panel next, which my friends to the
this one's stuck with Councillor Frenchman. You enjoyed that meeting, Councillor, as we had. It was a bit of a bust up upstairs.
Which is assignment 7 on the plan. This work is interlinked with the task panel we've spoken about that Councillor Frenchman's taking on this evening. So a lot of this will be done later on, and you'll see from the dates, strategy for council adoption, the timescale was December 15, and the web transport page was January 2015. The December 14 on recommendation 2 is not an error. That initial bit has been done. We put something into Daventry calling in December 2014. So some progress has been made on that, but the recommendations have not yet been delivered.
The website one hasn't been done, has it?
No, not yet. No.
Do you have any indication when that might be?
January 15, we've got it into it.
Oh, yeah, that's passed. That's passed.
It has indeed, sorry, yes.
Maybe we need to
be putting January 16.
Oh, sorry, no, it was completed.
It was?
Oh, it was completed in January 16.
Yeah, completed.
Oh, so I just need to check out how you noticed.
I think, Tony, what we'll do there is we'll keep them at hand, but I'll add an extra note. Also say, waiting on Frenchman's group. So we know there's some extra feeding to come. Okay, I'll stop you very briefly. It's 9:15, everybody. This one is always a bit of a challenge, this meeting. Are we happy to carry on? If you don't, just enter me the next meeting anyway. Happy to carry on, Tony, as well?
Yeah, it is on
Monday. Very good, no forced labour issues. Thank you. Okay.
Let's find that off.
Let's get things moving.
Plain English task panel, which is assignment 5 on the programme.
Perfect, thank you.
We still have one recommendation outstanding, which is a survey, and I'm not sure whether that one has been done. Being we're at the 30th today, I'll certainly get an update on that for next time.
So this is 4 green and 1 amber.
Yeah, the recommendation 1 has been split into 2 actions, and certainly the second action is waiting on the community engagement strategy, which goes to strategy group next week and then on to council in July. So that can't happen until that's been done.
I think I'll put down 4 green and 1 amber. I think that kind of reflects it.
Yeah. Okay.
People get the right idea for looks at these anyway.
Public engagement task panel, which is assignment 6. The red text is showing the changes since you last saw this, so there has been some progress, albeit we still have one action outstanding, which again is related to the public engagement strategy.
So is that four green?
That is 3 green and 1 amber. I think four.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise, it runs over. So 3 green, 1 amber.
Yeah, and that will happen. Well, assuming strategy group and council approval comes before it.
Great. So see, thank you, Tony. That's all of them, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you can see newer councillors for the committee. That's how it works. We get the line of sight, we keep bringing Tony back in and keep seeing how it's implemented. Obviously, when you get into it, you can ask more questions on those if you need to, or you can take it as read from Tony over there. So that's the implementation activity. And you can see that deals with A, B, C, D and E. Item number 11. Before I go on to that, does that make sense to you, the rolling work programme and the workflow, how they fit together?
Yes.
But you can see how busy we've been actually on the last year or so. So this document here is basically our update for the year. I did it as a PowerPoint presentation just so you could read it quicker rather than doing a whole lot of work.
You're not presenting it to somebody?
No. I think if it reads okay, I don't think we need to. But I think it's kind of taken on board the fact that it's only a quick summary of the year. You've had all the reports, etc. And people don't like reading too much stuff to quite frankly. So I'm not going to talk you through it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You know what we do? Yeah. It's a quick overview of our purpose and objective and how we operate.
Can I make one comment?
You can make a comment if you like, or any questions. Obviously you've read it already, so what would you like to raise?
Yes, on page 88.
Page 80.
The third one says any member free to bring issues forward for our attention.
For attention of SNI.
Do councillors know that? I don't think that we necessarily stress that enough.
Here's the thing, this goes off to full council afterwards, and I will reiterate that when I
That's the
absolutely.
That's why I was asking if you're doing a presentation, because that will come out if you were, but that's right.
It's a really good point actually, Councillor Richmond, because actually by having it on a page like that, it jumps out of you, may not do in a document. If you remember what we did last year, and what we did, for instance, corporate governance is a Word document.
Yes.
And I think that I could just say, quickly read through the points, any questions. Yeah. But that is really important because I know, particularly after the strategy group meeting that time, that was really raised about widening the group of members that can attend.
But also there's the new members as well.
And new members.
So familiar with it.
So please, when you're putting your work groups together, plunder the new member population and get their insight. You probably want some experienced people on there as well to give you some help in terms of going to the right people as well. So that's a quick look at performance, the way we approach assignments. I've also on this one put in about recommendations adopted, so we've got a quick summary on those. That's just really summarising from the work programme, the status. Then we've got work in progress. This is actually at this point in time, obviously we wanted to make sure that's captured. And also what I've done here, I thought would be useful going forward, is to say, because we have this very vital opportunity to bring people in quickly and speak to them and get them to present, we've put those on as well. So we'll make a note of that and that'll be presented each year. So what happens to this, if you're happy for this to go forward, this will go forward to full council, and that completes our duty of submitting some kind of report from our committee. Other than Councillor Frenchman's, any other comments? No? Okay, good, thank you.
Chairman, just for clarity, then is your intention just to have this as a hard paper document on council?
That's correct, Tony. I'm not intending to stand up to present it, but I might stand up and say, I'll present you this report, please. Yeah, basically. I think most people know how to work a PowerPoint presentation, so this is pretty straightforward. Good, yeah, so that's my intention, Tony. And I'll put on here, so we'll add people invited. Right.
That's that one then. And finally, number 12, we have here to agree a portfolio holder. We said Councillor Hills, been invited, happy with that?
Yeah, that'd actually be interesting for Mark, because I guess he'd have some handle on possibly the
might do.
what you were talking about earlier.
I'm sure people can.
I'll hold it, you can hit it.
One thing before we, that's agreed then, so we'll invite him for the next meeting. If what we need is a deputy, because occasionally people aren't available. If he's not available, I'd like to keep momentum going. So do we have a second choice? Who would like to invite in? Councillor Scrutiny, you look like you were about to...
I was just thinking.
I don't know who you not had. It's
Councillor James is new to role. He might be... Councillor Howard we invited last time, but it was coming to election. I'll be very interested to know about the Love Daventry campaign, particularly. Should we...
So, and then the deputy can be promoted to the
following one. Okay. So reserve is Councillor Howard.
Thank you. As well.
A final point for me, actually, it's not urgent business, but I don't know if any of you have this feeling when you go into one of these meetings, we all refer to each other by councillor, but then we call the management team by their first names. It always feels wrong to me, actually. Particularly in this kind of meeting, so we keep calling you Councillor Wesley, and then they go to him, it's just Tony, you know, it doesn't feel right.
You Officer Tony? Sorry, yes, you are.
Yeah, it's a serious point. I think I had the pleasure last week of doing some work in India with one of my colleagues, and he's with one of his members of staff, and she kept calling him Sir. And then I said, and then she called him Row Sir, and I said, why do you keep being irreverential about it? I said, why do you keep calling him Sir? It's because he has a lot of experience, he's very knowledgeable, and he always helps me out. And it just dawned on me, you know, they're genuinely calling people Sir now. And I don't want to get into that level of historical, but I'm not suggesting we call you Sir Tony, but
I could live with that.
Anyway, I don't know, just maybe there's something we should call you in these meetings, or they're just maybe just not, I don't know, maybe a bit of...
Perhaps you just call us by our first names.
I don't know that either though, that's the thing, maybe it's just me sticking a form up. What do you reckon, DC?
I think Sir Tony has a certain...
Maybe we might just adopt that informally.
Dame Wendy.
Good, well on that note then, thank you very much Sir Tony. Did you have a comment?
I think, I mean, you know, we're having a little bit of a joke at this. The meetings are open to the public.
Yes.
They
do get recorded.
They do get recorded, so they're available on the website. So there needs to be some sort of protocol.
Seriously, that's actually what I mean. I mean, I do think there's a protocol, and calling you Tony, because that's why I say Tony just didn't feel right. But I think in here, because I had that conversation here about how I refer to you, and because it's open to the world, we're all very formal, and I guess we're still being recorded until we finish the meeting, but it just, I don't know, it doesn't feel, genuinely, I don't have a bit of love, but it doesn't feel right, actually. Yeah. Anyway, let's close the meeting. Thank you very much.